All right, here we go. Welcome into Off the Bench. My name is Stone Shield, sitting in a little bit of a different seat here today. No Trace Fowler, no Reed Mouse. I'm stepping in here to host Off the Bench, so that means 2 hours of me here today. Certainly hope you join us throughout the entirety of Off the Bench. And then my show will follow from 11 to noon. Got plenty in store today on today's edition of Off the Bench. Got a couple of guests lined up. We got Reed Mouse is going to be calling in and joining us in about 15 minutes, and towards the end of our show at about 10:40, we'll hear from Craig Sandlin. Plenty to talk about as it relates to the Cincinnati Bengals with both of those guys. We'll also spend some time talking about the MLB postseason. The Blue Jays clinch their spot in the ALCS. The other three series are still up in the air here at this point. A couple of games in the National League tonight, and then we'll get Game 5 tomorrow between the Seattle Mariners and the Detroit Tigers, and that certainly is very, very exciting. We'll have another buy or sell segment here today, but you might be sitting here wondering, well, if you're talking right now and you're hosting Off the Bench, well, who in the world is producing? And there's somebody that people in the chat over the course of the last several weeks have been asking about, wondering where he is, how he's doing, what the heck he is up to, and he is here today, and that is my good friend and my right-hand man, Casey McAllister. He's going to help us out and produce today, and we're going to hear from him as well as it relates to his thoughts on the Cincinnati Bengals. Casey, how are we doing here on this great Thursday morning?
Oh, man, Stone. It's been a long time since I've had to produce any of our shows and be on camera. I've produced other things, but it's been a long time, and, man, I got a little nervous. It's been a while. I didn't used to get nervous for these shows. Did them all the time, and now I'm a little nervous. It's been a while since I've been on the mic, and I've got a lot of thoughts because I've not been able to really speak my mind on any of our platforms about my favorite teams and where they're at right now. And I look forward to sharing some of those thoughts with all of you because they're not great, and we need a little wake up call from some of you. Sorry to be so negative right off the get, but I mean, anyways, I'm excited to be here and looking forward to our show today, Stone. Looking forward to it. We got Reed and we got Craig, I think, coming up later. So got a full show list here for you. And I mean, you want to hop right into it? You want me to just start?
Yeah, no, well, obviously made a big move early in the week, trading for Joe Flacco. Obviously, we had the live show a couple of days ago talking about it. We talked about it on Off the Bench yesterday and my show as well yesterday. But I think the people are very intrigued to get your opinion on the situation. I know you have a lot to get off your chest as it relates to the Cincinnati Bengals as a whole. So as a fan, and you are a diehard Bengals fan, the team sits at 2-3 right now. It certainly feels like they are 0-5. That's not the case. They are 2-3. Jake Browning was awful. They traded for a quarterback. It's Joe Flacco. He's 40 years of age. Just give me your kind of state of the union, how you feel right now as a Cincinnati Bengals fan. Be honest and just let it rip for us here.
Yeah, this team is – I'm sorry. This is a kid's show, but they're ass. They're really bad. They're really bad. And it's not just like – you can't just blame one position group. It's the whole team. Like, literally the entire team is really bad. I don't understand why people are trying to, like, grasp at straws that, like, oh, there's some guy here, like, Demetrius Knight, he's kind of playing well. Like, no, none of them from top to bottom are at a level that you're like, yeah, we could keep this guy on the team next year and it'd be fine. Like, you would want to look for a replacement. Like, let's say we had the Eagles roster or just any pick a top contending roster right now. There's not a single player on this team besides Jamar Chase and maybe T. Higgins, but I'm starting to lose faith in T. Higgins now too. I mean, the dude, like, we paid this absurd amount of money towards because he's supposed to be this top 10 receiver. Some of us say top 20, and I thought that at one point. Just can't get the ball, and he just can't get open. There's a multitude of things, but regardless, this team is really bad, and I know people want to point at coaching, but man, you look at the actual execution out there from these players, it's horrible. Regardless of what the scheme is, they look bad out there. They look like they're not ready. again, points towards coaching. But at some point, we're 5 weeks in the season. I want to believe that, like, at some point you got to start showing that you're an NFL caliber player, right? Right?
Oh, yeah.
Some of these guys don't even look like they deserve to be on the starting team. They deserve to be on the practice squad. I guess I could point towards Duke and the way that he's built this team and how poorly it's gone. But, I mean, my mind on this team right now is so bad. It's so just completely destroyed. I didn't realize just how good Joe Burrow was until this season. And I thought, I might have been one of those guys that said that Jake Browning in a different offense kind of makes this Bengals team, jive a little bit. It gives them a different vibe. It makes it work a little bit. No, I was totally wrong. And I'll put my hand up and admit that I was a fool. Joe Burrow, I mean, he is incredible. I cannot imagine him being on another team because I think that they would be truly a dynasty. They would be what Tom Brady was for any other team in the NFL. It's crazy how bad this team is. Absolutely absurd. I did not realize how bad they were until this season. And then it's just such a wake-up call. Joe Flacco, I think, is like a perfect example of how this team is so fundamentally flawed on their evaluation of themselves. We're going to go get a 40-plus old quarterback, 39, whatever, that can't move when your offensive line also can't move. They had 3 guys pressure on a 5-man, 6-man protection, and they got both guys home. They got 2 guys home on a 3-man rush. And you're thinking that Joe Flacco is going to wheel and deal? He's going to be wacko Flacco out there for you? That's absurd. They're literally setting you up for failure. They're setting you up to be disappointed once again. And I'm not going to let them do that. I'm going to put my stake here right now and say that the season's done. I'm going to do the Elliott. The 2025 season, 2026 season is over. We need to just get over it. Start going into either the evaluation mode where we can start like really focusing in on these shitty players. Sorry, excuse my language, kids show, but it's bad. It's so bad. I can't stress it so much to you guys how bad it's been. As someone that's been the guy that watches the film, is super analytical about this stuff, there's just not a single person I can point to that hasn't either taken a step back or is a shining light for this season. I mean, it's quite literally incredible. And maybe a lot of this is pent up rage and aggression for all the money I've lost on this team. But that being said, it doesn't excuse their just poor execution all around. And that's my feelings on the Bengals. I hope that you all enjoyed my just venting and frustration of this team. I'm somewhat thankful that I was able to take a step back from the shows because, man, you guys would absolutely hate my guts this year because I am just so down bad. And I just don't know if there's any way. There's not a positive read spin. There's not a positive stone spin that can change my mind on this because I watched the product and it's so bad. It's so bad. I just don't get how you can salvage it. It's like the offensive line completely out of sync. The defensive line that we thought was improved. Well, Shamar got hurt, but you think those guys take a step forward. No, they're all just kind of like, we're going to get some like back of the game sacks, just sacks that are meaningless. I don't know. Sorry that's been so everywhere, guys. I'm so worked up about it. I've been so frustrated about this team that it's hard to just keep a straight path on what I'm trying to convey here, other than that they stink. If I were to still be here doing my stink list, they would be at the bottom of it probably for the last 3 weeks. I mean, it's been bad. It's been really bad. And then, other than that, the other teams around Cincinnati, FC Cincinnati, I haven't really been able to talk about them much. I'll give you my little tidbit on that. They're the only team that I really give a damn about right now. And they just lost out on the Supporter Shield because they tied with the team 2 weeks ago that they shouldn't have any business tying with. And go figure. Cincinnati sports, right? We'll see what they do in the playoffs. But, of course, all their star players dropping like flies, getting hurt. Imagine that. Star defender not coming back this year. I mean, it's just absurd how bad Cincinnati sports are right now. Thank God for the Reds got us to, beginning of October? What a joke. This season's just not been good to me. I mean, even my college teams, Notre Dame and Penn State, absolutely terrible. They're terrible. There's just not there's not any light in my sports fandom whatsoever. That's where I'm at today, Stone.
I feel like that was therapeutic for you. There was a lot you needed to get off your chest there, and you let it rip there. I think you needed that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier on the show. I told him this is not going to be very professional. This is going to be me just venting and getting all this crap off my chest, because that's what it feels like. These teams have just been taking dumps on my chest. Yeah, I mean, it's not good. It's not good. The only hope that I have is that they do what Reed says, tear it down to the studs, maybe keep Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase around, and just let's do a complete makeover. I want to watch what is the TLC show or the THC, whatever, with the remodeling the homes and whatnot. Yeah, I want to see that. I want to see us remodel the Cincinnati Bengals into the team that I think that they can be, and hopefully one day that they'll get back to. But as of today, they are not that team.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly a lot to unpack there as it relates to the Cincinnati Bengals. I do think you bring up a couple of good points as far as what this team has for them on the defensive side of the football and around their star players, right? Obviously, it's a team that was built around Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase, and when the guy that you build the team around is not out there on the football field, it can look pretty ugly, and that certainly is the situation that Cincinnati finds himself in here right now. But I think you bring up a great point. When you look at this team, you look at guys on the defensive side of the ball, other aspects of this football team as well, and you go, is this guy, a guy for the future? Do you have confidence in him developing into a good player? And you just don't. There's not many guys that you see on this team that could give you a lot of faith, right? I think, Logan Wilson is a guy that, he was drafted. That was the last time the Bengals had a good draft, right? And he's a guy that, he's good in the community, says all the right things. We all like him, and he's looked better this year, but it's like, well, how much longer can you run him out there as that guy? Guys like Joseph Osai, right? He's on that prove-it deal, that 1 year, $7.5 million contract. Well, how's he doing? Has he got some pressure on the quarterback? Yeah, but is he a guy that can help transcend this team? And then your DBs are a total mess there as well. Newton, he's a fifth-round guy, right? And he's playing like a fifth-round guy. You got Cam Taylor-Britt, who you took earlier. He appears to be a miss. He showed promise early in his career, and obviously he has struggled at the position since then. Dax Hill really feels like one of the only guys that's really competent on that defense, and it just goes to showcase how much Joe Burrow was able to mask at that quarterback position, how much he was able to cover for at that spot. And now without him, you're seeing this thing get really ugly really, really fast. And obviously that is a serious, serious issue. So one more question for you, and then whenever we got Reed, just let me know, and then we'll obviously welcome him into the show. But do you think this team can take a step in the right direction and improve a little bit? It seemed like you're completely down and out on the Cincinnati Bengals, and I can't blame you, and nobody in the chat, by the way, is blaming you for that either. But can this offense look a little bit more competent with Joe Flacco, who, by the way, got here a couple of days ago? Can they look more competent with him than Jake Browning?
what's more like
more than 3 points in the first half
is the worst. Oh, so 3 points. So we're gonna score 6.
Yeah, that would be an improvement. That's how bad it's been with Jake Browning.
It's been really bad with Jake Browning. I'll admit. I mean, the Jake Browning truthers out there looked really stupid. I mean, it's been horrendously bad quarterback play. I just don't know. Like, again, the thing about Jake, if I can, get my head back on here a little bit and not be so ranty here for a second. Jake was at least a little mobile, could roll out of the pocket, can survive a pass rush, survive. I mean, he's still made plenty of mistakes. He's just not Joe Burrow, but Joe Flacco, is a statue. I have a really tough time believing that he can. The perfect example is Jake Browning throwing that touchdown, the first touchdown, I believe, to Jamar Chase last week, where he's running and he makes a perfect throw. Joe's not doing that, and that's where I think you're gonna get some better play when the play is executed properly, but you're gonna lose out on any of the extending. And I think that we rely so much on that ability to extend the play, probably too much. I mean, just look at Burrow and his situation, that I just don't see it getting much better. It's going to go from 32nd to 28th, which I guess is an improvement. But nothing contending wise. They're not going to contend for a wild card, I don't think, with him. And maybe that's not the goal. Maybe the goal is just to have a product out there that's serviceable when it's versus lesser talent. If they came out and said that, I would give him a lot more grace. And when they went out and got Joe Flacco, but I think the addition to Joe Flacco is just how it's a reflection on how poorly they evaluate their team, because it's they don't recognize their own weaknesses. That's how I feel. They are just so oblivious to themselves that it's really going to affect this year and years to come if they don't change something, that they don't change coaching, and if they don't change the evaluation part, which is the Duke and the player, the scouting personnel. They got to change something there, because it's quite frankly not good enough, and it's definitely taken its toll on this team over the last few years. And the other thing too, about that evaluation part is we can't ever seem to get it right either. We're thinking, let's go ahead and extend Ted Karras, and he's probably had the worst season of his career this year. Orlando Brown, same thing. It's just, they can't ever seem to get it right. I don't know what that's about. I mean, quite frankly, it's got to be the evaluation part, right? I think they're probably the worst in the league about that. I think they get lucky when they have can't miss prospects, because they're so bad the years prior that they're able to get those guys. And without them, you see what this team is. So, yeah, I mean, what can you say about the Bengals right now, man? I mean, it's not good. It's not good. I think my only hope is that it's an addition by subtraction. Maybe they rally around some interim head coach, maybe. Yes, that is me kind of calling for Zach's job, but I really don't think you can blame just coaching, or you can blame just players. It's a collective effort. They're all really bad. As much as I defended Zach in 2023 when he was able to turn the season around with Jake Browning, I feel it's got to be a team effort, right? There's got to be something there that allows them to be able to, to compete. And I mean, maybe it is just all the talent on the team is not good from the evaluation side of things, but I mean, I don't know, man. It is what it is. The Bengals right now, not good. So what can you do about it right now? There's not much.
Yeah. And we'll see if they're able to improve this week, show some signs of life perhaps in this game against Green Bay. And we actually have Reed Mouse now joining us live here on the show. He is standing by. I want to get his thoughts a little bit more here on the Cincinnati Bengals and, of course, Joe Flacco. Reed, can you hear me? How are we?
I can hear you. And you know what, Stone? I'm doing really well. For those who don't know who I am that are watching the show, I'm Nicholas Reed Mouse. I work for Chatterbox. I'm 29 years old. And when I was in high school, a teacher asked us if anyone knew what euthanasia was. And I prominently raised my hand, got called on, and I said, "Is it young people in China?" So I'm doing well. Not as well as I think Casey McAllister is. Because I think the show opened up, you're like, "Hey, how you doing, Casey?" And he went on a 12-minute tirade that ended up with him saying, "I feel like these teams in Cincinnati are taking dumps on my chest."
Yes.
But I'm doing better than Casey. How are you doing, Stone?
Oh, I'm doing phenomenal. I think he really needed that. We talked about it. He needed that kind of therapy to kind of get that off his chest. I think he feels a little bit better. But I'm doing phenomenal. I'm sitting here in your chair here today. By the way, I don't know how you do this. I mean, this chair, it's not the best chair in the world. I've almost fallen off this thing a few times. We might have to, figure out a different way we're going to set this thing up. But, yeah, you're a real trooper for sitting on this guy every single day. But I do want to jump in to the Cincinnati Bengals conversation. You joined us on our live show obviously a couple of days ago, once the Bengals traded, of course, for Joe Flacco. You've now had some time to digest it, think about it, sleep on it. You were of the mind that you didn't think that he should play in this game against Green Bay. Obviously, Zac Taylor does not agree, as Zac Taylor is going to roll him out as the starter. General thoughts on the trade again, kind of to go back to that a little bit, and also the decision from Zac and the team to start him against Green Bay on Sunday.
So I thought that they weren't going to play him because I thought it would be too quick of a turnaround. What I didn't account for is that the good old complex offensive system that is Zac Taylor's offensive system could be learned in a 3.5-hour car ride over the phone. I didn't expect that. I knew it was very complex and very intricate and a lot of nuance. So I just didn't expect Joe Flacco to just learn it all during a car ride. Luckily, someone else was driving, or else it really would have taken a lot of the attention. I think that we all know that they're not in a good spot. I think they're still 2-touchdown underdogs against the Packers. That's the same against. That's the same with Jake Browning. That's the same with Joe Flacco. So the bigger game is next Thursday against the Steelers. So if you want to think of this as like getting ready for the Thursday night game, like, yeah, you're expecting to win. You want to win, but you really want to see what Joe Flacco can do, and maybe he can get some chemistry and get comfortable with the team going into that Thursday night game. So that's why I think that he's going to play. And some more thoughts that I had about this trade. A lot of people had given the Bengals credit for this trade, and the more and more I think about it, and this is without reading on the other reports, I know that they said that there was never communication with the Giants about Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston. The more and more I think about this trade, what's the likelihood that we initiated it? What's the likelihood that we called the Cleveland Browns like, "Hey, we really want Joe Flacco"? Or do you think Andrew Berry and the Cleveland Browns just kept calling us up like, "Hey, we got nothing to do with this guy. Do you want him?" And then after the Detroit Lions game, like, "Yeah, sure, we'll take him." So I don't know if that's where you're at, but that's where I'm at right now, where I was giving the Bengals credit for an in-season trade, but maybe it was the Browns just initiating it, and the Bengals don't deserve any credit. But neither here nor there. We'll see. We're wacko for Flacco here in Cincinnati.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, that's an interesting. I didn't even think about it from that angle.
Yeah,
but to go out of their way for a 5th-round pick to do that, I don't know. But, clearly Zac Taylor has a lot of respect for Joe Flacco. We've heard him talk about Flacco thinking all the way back to week 1 when obviously the Bengals were facing Joe Flacco. And clearly this is a guy that Zac Taylor has some belief in. And you mentioned that report, I believe it was from Diana Rossini of The Athletic, that suggested that the Bengals didn't even reach out to the Giants. There was a couple of other names that got floated around. Maybe, some truth to it. Maybe rumors. Drew Lock was a guy. Sam Howell was a guy. Are you disappointed at all that they didn't do any due diligence with the Giants? Or out of all the possible available options, do you think Flacco was the best one?
I don't think he was the best option, but I think when you gauge, I don't think he's the best quarterback that we could have gotten. But when you gauge and grade it on a curve of cost versus what you're getting, I think he's probably the most efficient. in the fact that, I mean, we moved back a round and a half to go get Joe Flacco. So it's a relatively low cost risk here. And also, like, I think there's a chance that we're looking up here in 3 weeks and we're like, all right, the better case forward is to be very bad and not be competitive. And you might still be able to do that with Joe Flacco. Like, he hasn't been good this past year. What really wasn't that good last year. So I don't think he's the best available quarterback that we could have gotten. But when you grade what it would have cost, I don't know what a Russell Wilson would have cost. I don't know what a Jameis Winston would have cost. Probably a little more than 40-year-old Joe Flacco. But I'm cool with it either way. Like, it's something new, and it's given this city hope that we seemingly lost over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I think a big reason why I think they probably went in the direction of Flacco was because they had the mindset, okay, we need to change now. We can't afford to roll Jake Browning out there. And I think they felt the most confident that they could get a guy like Joe Flacco up to speed quicker than anybody else. And, you know, there's been reports and discussion around the league like, well, is there really another guy out there that could learn an offense like that? And you feel comfortable that he can go out there and at least contribute and help perhaps lead to some winning football. And I don't really think there was any names on that list that could have provided, that kind of benefit for Cincinnati with a guy like Joe Flacco that obviously has been around and has done things like that in the past.
Don't say that, because as we know, if you need to learn Zac Taylor's offense, we'll just drive you in circles for 3.5 hours and talk to you on the phone. It's like, like when you have a young infant and they're like, can only go to sleep if they're in the car. That's the only way to learn Zac Taylor's offense. We'll just drive in a circle for 3.5 hours, and we'll just do the 275 loop until you got it.
Yeah.
Until you got it. That's all Jameis or whoever would have been here. That's all it would have taken.
How long of a car ride do you think you need for Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay's offense?
Ooh, probably cross country. You gotta go. What's the highway and cars? You just got to go to Radiator Springs and go across the entire country from Maryland to California, and that's how you get it done.
Yeah, certainly a lot more complex there. But let's turn the page a little bit and talk about the game specifically. Obviously, the Bengals have gotten blown out 3 consecutive weeks. The Packers look like world beaters for a while, but they also haven't won a game since week 2. You know, they had the disappointing loss against Joe Flacco, 13-10, and then that Jeff Hafley defense, who you and I thought was really good, they gave up 40 to Dak Prescott, who, by the way, is kind of playing at an MVP level, but he's on a team that isn't going to make the postseason, so probably not going to get enough credit for that. But in this game for Cincinnati, beyond Joe Flacco, what improvement would you like to see from this team? Obviously, you would like to see a victory, but at the end of the game, if some things transpire on the field and you go, okay, that was positive, what are you looking for in this game?
I think the thing that I'm looking forward most is on the offensive line. And it's not just Joe Flacco, his ability, but like, if this is going to work at all, if any hope that you have on this season, keeping it afloat till Joe Burrow, whatever your aspirations are this year, it's going to revolve around, or it's going to need being able to protect a very non-mobile quarterback. So I need to see this offensive line compete better against a really premier pass rush. Casey brought up just last game where we've had 6 guys blocking 3, and they still got home. That cannot happen. Because then at that point, like, why are we even bringing back Drew Sample or Samaje Perine to help with the blocking scheme? So I need this offensive line to be better. That's simply the most important thing the Bengals need to have any success this year, because Joe Flacco cannot move, and the prominence of gaining a Joe Flacco is his ability to throw downfield and throw over the middle of the field, and that can't happen if he's having to get rid of the ball in a second and a half. Like, we've got to be able to protect our quarterback here in town. And I know I'm not breaking new ground on the Cincinnati Bengals here, but that's something that desperately needs to happen. And I think you have, if you want to talk about opportunities, you have an opportunity here to prove that you can get it done. And it's a tall task against the Green Bay Packers pass rush, but you have an opportunity to show that you can compete if you're that offensive line unit.
Well, perhaps the guy that could help contribute to that is Lucas Patrick, who, of course, that was the move that Cincinnati made where everyone's like, oh, they got to add to the offense line. They got to bring in somebody at kind of the tail end of free agency. They were like, oh, yeah, we'll bring in Lucas Patrick, this kind of journeyman guy that never has been a reliable starter, and that was their big addition to the offensive line. But we didn't really get to fully see how Lucas Patrick could perform. Obviously, there was the stories and reports in camp that it wasn't good. The preseason, he certainly looked like the weak link on the offensive line, but he gets hurt that first week against Cleveland, and clearly the guys coming in behind him have struggled when you're talking about Dalton Risner and then a fifth-round rookie in Jalen Rivers, who's more used to playing tackle, and you ask him to bump inside and play that guard position. Next thing you know, you got two rookies on your offensive line, which obviously isn't a great spot to be in. With Lucas Patrick probably coming back, we don't know for certain. He did return to practice yesterday, was limited with that calf. Does that give you any optimism that he could potentially come back, or are you still kind of in the same boat of we're in serious trouble with this offensive line?
I think we're still in trouble, but if he does come back, it's obviously was the blueprint before the season started. Like that's who Duke Tobin, Zac Taylor, this team designated as being the improvement on the line is Lucas Patrick. So if that's the guy they wanted and that's the guy that they feel comfortable in, then yeah, it's hard not to gain a little bit of hope or gain a little bit of excitement if he's going to come back. Now we'll see if he does come back, but it's more it helps our depth. It helps a lot of things on this team, not just that starting unit, but being able to shore up some holes if someone else goes down or someone else gets banged up and they need a few plays off, that now we can slide in Risner somewhere or Patrick or whoever, Jalen Rivers. Like, it doesn't matter. It supplies us with a little bit of depth, and I hope he's ready to go because that was the blueprint before the season.
And it seems like the Bengals defense kind of has danced around a little bit some criticism here. You and I talked earlier in the week about let's not act like they're the 85 Bears here because, yeah, they might not be the reason that you're losing games right now, but they're certainly not going out there and winning football games for you. Now, could any defense with what the ineptitude you have at the quarterback position through this point? Probably not. Right, but let's say Joe Flacco goes out there, he doesn't turn the ball over, doesn't do anything spectacular, but he scores some points in the first half, scores some points in the second half. Do you feel confident at all that this defense can slow down Jordan Love and this Packers offense? Because I think this Packers team is going to be really hungry after a tie and a loss. You know, you and I both thought that this was one of the best teams, one of the best offenses in the National Football League. And me, not to sit here and try to be overly pessimistic, but I feel like this is a game where, you know, it gets played and maybe you see some improvement on offense, but you sit there and go, this defense just still ain't it.
I am terrified of watching this defense against the Packers on a long week. As we all know, with the coaching advantage we have, Zac Taylor over Matt LaFleur. I think I got it right. Coach LaFleur of the Green Bay Packers, and he's coming off a bye, and he's coming off a couple weeks, so he's got a little bit more time to prepare, all those things. When you watch the Packers play, and I'll give this a shout-out to Sean Spurlock, our boss. He's long time said this, and it's true. When you watch the Packers play, more than any other team in the NFL, they always seemingly have dudes wide open downfield. Like, not just like 40 yards behind the line of scrimmage, but like 15 yards downfield, a dude just wide open. You never see that with the Bengals. Every time that it's a big play, it's Joe Burrow threading a needle to Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. Like, that does not happen here in Cincinnati. And I'm going to go ahead and think that it's probably going to happen this week against our team. Yeah, but point blank, this defense has – I want to say they've improved slightly from where they were a year ago. But they have long avoided criticism because they are being compared to this offense and to Jake Browning, which was completely inept, that you couldn't even spend time talking about the defense because it felt like a waste of breath because the offense was so piss poor. Like, even just this past Sunday, and I know that there was a couple of short field positions and stuff like that, and the Detroit Lions probably are the best team in the NFL at this current moment. They gave up 37 points, and it felt like we were watching the 85. It felt like we were watching the 2002 Baltimore Ravens with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. Like, that's how it felt. It was like, this defense is keeping us in this game. They gave them 37 points. They have 37 points. Like, what are we talking about here? And more than likely, the Green Bay Packers are going to score 30-plus points. That's just point blank probably what's going to happen. And it's probably going to be an ugly game. But maybe just maybe we can get Jordan Love to turn the ball over a few times, which is his biggest bugaboo. Like if he turns the ball over, if he doesn't turn the ball over, the Packers are borderline unbeatable. But sometimes he turns the ball over a lot, and it puts them in a really tough spot. And to our defense's credit, they have been able to generate some turnovers. So maybe they can get a couple turnovers and get us in a short field position for Joe Flacco, and we can put some points on the board and make it a little more interesting game than the 14-point spread suggests.
And Trace and I talked about this yesterday. When you have a backup quarterback in Jake Browning, and then you go off him, and then you bring this guy in from the Cleveland Browns and Joe Flacco, only a few days to prepare, you have to have a coach that can put the player in a good position to go out there and succeed. Obviously, there's lots of question marks around Zac Taylor, and rightfully so. What are some of the things you want to see from Zac in this game? Obviously, you and I were not play callers, but what would you like to see from this team offensively that maybe puts Joe Flacco in a position to succeed, where you can sit there and go, you know what, that was good from Zac Taylor. He put Joe Flacco in a good spot here to potentially get some points. From a game plan perspective, what do you want to see from this offense?
More flea flickers. I need more flea flickers from the Cincinnati Bengals offense. Every time it feels like we do a trick play, it doesn't work. Also, I want to give a special shout out to our other boss, Trace, because I was down bad as a fan. Then I watched his last few shows, and he tickled me pink about the current state of the Cincinnati Bengals. A lot of positive spin about our Cincinnati Bengals from the boss, which I appreciate. What do I want from this offensive play call? Obviously, I think we're going to go under center a lot more. I do think that. I know that Joe Burrow had always gone in shotgun, and Jake Browning had gone in shotgun a lot. I think we're going to see a lot more under center with Joe Flacco, because that's kind of what he's always ran. That's what he ran in Baltimore. That's what he ran in Cleveland when he had some success. So I think we're going to see a lot more under center, maybe some play action. Hopefully we get that run game working, which, I mean, maybe at this point we got to stop talking about it because it doesn't seem like it's going to get all – I mean, they ran okay, I guess, on Sunday. But we got to get the run game going, and that will be able to open up for Joe. And like I said, if we can get the offensive line to hold ground just a little longer, I like the idea of Joe Flacco being able to take some deep shots. Obviously, he's got the strong arm. Obviously, he's going to throw it over the middle. And he's probably going to throw an interception or two. That just is what it is. But at least we're throwing an interception on competitive, big-time plays, and not just like checkdowns like Jake Browning was doing. Like we were getting the worst of both worlds. We were turning the ball over with Jake, and we weren't making many deep threats. With Joe Flacco, you're going to take some deep shots if we're able to keep him upright long enough. And that's what I want to be able to. I want to have the Packers commit to stopping our run game, and therefore we can protect Joe and try downfield a few times. That's what I want from this offense. And more flea flickers. More flea flickers.
More trickery. Yeah, we'll see how exactly that plays out. But before we let you go, Reed, I do want to get your thoughts on the MLB playoffs real quick. Obviously, it's been there's some great games here to this point. Your Chicago Cubbies are alive. They scored 4 runs in the first inning. That was enough to get the victory at Wrigley Field against Milwaukee. They play again tonight at Wrigley late, I believe, past 9 o'clock Eastern time. How do you feel about the Cubbies? How do you feel about the win last night and your confidence level here going into tonight as they try to extend this series another game?
First off, thank you for letting me talk about the Cubs. It's always a joy to talk about the Cubs. Yeah, everyone. No one lets me talk about the gosh darn Chicago Cubs. Listen, it's not good. They're probably not going to win this series. I think Matthew Boyd's going to pitch tonight. They're going to play. You mentioned the 4 runs. The Cubs had gone 12 consecutive postseason games dating back to 2017, where they had scored 3 or less runs before last night. They scored 4 in the first, and you're like, we're finally going to explode this offense. And, of course, they don't, but they hold on for dear life. Brad Keller in the 8th inning was the original term for a closing pitcher in the MLB was a fireman. And when Brad Keller was, being the fireman in the 8th inning with the bases juiced and the tying run on third and the go-ahead run on second base, my hotel that I'm staying out here in the city that never brotherly loves, Louisville, Kentucky, when that was happening, my fire alarm was going off in my hotel to where I had to evacuate my hotel. And my wife probably doesn't want to know this, but while the fire alarm was going off, I watched like 3 at bats, and I was like, this building ain't on fire. I'm fine. It's just and then eventually I had to go outside and had to watch on my phone, but we got through it. And it was a good metaphor for the firemen coming and saving the day, and Brad Keller coming to save the day. I just didn't want to get swept by Milwaukee. You got that monkey off your back. And Milwaukee doesn't want us to go back to Milwaukee on Saturday, because all of a sudden, as much as we had a monkey on our back about beating the Milwaukee Brewers, they have a monkey on their back, which is succeeding in the playoffs. They've had a good run here recently, but they've been to the NLCS one time. And if they go back to Game 5 at home, it's going to start weighing on their brain like, oh, man, we can't. We're up 2-0, and we're gonna lose in the postseason again. So I just want to lean on them a little bit and see if those perennial losers can lose again. Because as we know, the Cubs are known for being one of the most proud winning franchises in the history of sport. So we just got to lean on the Brewers a little bit and watch them fold. We'll see. Well, I'm excited. I get to watch my favorite sports team, the Chicago Cubs, play another game. Yep. And that's all I can ask for. All I can ask for.
Well, Reed, we're certainly happy that you didn't suffer any injuries there in the fire. You got out of there, you evacuated, and you're still here to join us on Off the Bench. Appreciate your time, as always, brother, and we'll catch you soon here when you're back in this chair hosting. Good luck to your Cubs tonight, and also a good game with the Phillies and the Dodgers, as the Phillies were able to force another game there as well. But, Reed, appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon, all right?
Whoa. You're not going to you wish my Cubs good luck.
Yeah.
You wish my Cubs good luck, but my other sports team starts their season tonight. My hockey team. Do you know who I root for in hockey?
Let's hear it.
The Dallas Stars, baby, starting up tonight. We're gonna win the cup.
So you're a Bengals fan, a Cubs fan, and a Stars fan. I got an issue with that.
You got an issue with my hockey team?
Yeah.
Where's I supposed to root for?
Where's the consistency here?
You want me to root for
I
the
get there's
Miami
not a
Red Hawks or
Cincinnati hockey team, but maybe the Jackets. Yeah, you're all over the place here.
I am. All right, thanks, Dan.
All right, see you, bro. All right, Reed Mouse, appreciate him for stopping by, as always, here on the show. He'll be back here hosting next week. We got Craig Sandlin coming up any minute now. Case, do we have him yet or not yet?
Just get him. Let me
okay,
get him set up
yeah.
real quick.
Yep, absolutely. We'll talk to Craig Sandlin about the Cincinnati Bengals in a little bit there as well, but great stuff, as always, from Reed Mouse. And, we talked, obviously, about Joe Flacco and then kind of turned the page because they're going to play a football game. They're going to try to go out there and win the game there as well. At Lambeau Field against the Green Bay Packers. We've got some buy or sell coming up. We'll do that after we talk to Craig here on the show with Casey McAllister. Looking forward to getting some more thoughts from him. If you're just now joining us, you missed a beautiful opening segment from Casey McAllister as he got a lot of things off his chest as it relates to the Cincinnati Bengals. That was a lot of bottled up emotion there from Casey. We'll get back to Casey in a second, but we do have our second guest ready to rock and join us right now. Craig Sandlin is here. And, Craig, certainly appreciate you stopping by as always. And certainly a big week this week for Cincinnati. We talked about it on the live show, and I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Reed. You came on the live show with us, and we chopped it up with the Joe Flacco trade, obviously. Now you've had a couple of days. You've slept on it. What are your overall thoughts of the trade, and how you feeling going into this game on Sunday at Lambeau?
I mean, I was excited when the trade went down, Stone, and then I saw 2 videos yesterday of Joe Flacco hurling beautiful balls downfield to his guys, Andre Yoshivas, a couple others. I'm ready to go, man. I respect Jake Browning. I watched his interview yesterday after practice and heard him talk about this whole process and what went down, and understand he's frustrated, but so are us fans. And this team came into 2025 with Super Bowl expectations, and they're not meeting those expectations right now. And unfortunately for Jake Browning, that meant that the Bengals felt they needed to go out and make a move. And Joe Flacco, I think, is a good fit. And you heard from Chase Brown yesterday and how excited he was. You could see how giddy he was talking about Joe Flacco after his first practice, about how smart he came off, how intelligent he was, taking in the plays and just being able to rattle them right back off, as called it in the huddle. Those are the types of things you're looking for in a leader and someone that's new to the locker room to really just gain that respect right away. And it is very clear that Joe Flacco has already done that in this Bengals locker room.
For me, I think, we threw around a bunch of names on the show about guys they could potentially try to trade for. And the hot name for me at the time was Jameis Winston. I think a lot of people probably shared that same mindset there as well. Obviously, he's got a big arm. He was a starter for a really long time in Tampa. He's a fun guy, right? You think he might fit into the locker room really well, what have you. But as time has gone on, I'm kind of realizing that, I think this is the right call here for Joe Flacco. There's a lot that comes with Jameis Winston, right? Everything he says is basically turns into a soundbite somewhere. And Joe Flacco is very much a no-nonsense, 40 years of age, family man, all about football guy. And I think that'll, kind of help Cincinnati fly under the radar a little bit. Obviously, nationally, people are recognizing the fact that Cincinnati made a move for a quarterback, and Joe Flacco is going to be the starter. But I feel like he is the best fit for this team out of all the potential guys now that this thing has happened, and we kind of can look back on it and evaluate all the potential options that Cincinnati had. A couple of days ago, there was the report from Diana Rossini that the Bengals didn't even reach out to the New York Giants and Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Are you okay with that, or do you wish they would have done their due diligence on those guys as well?
No, I'm perfectly fine with it.
Yeah.
Both of those guys are walking memes, and
right.
you talk about all the names. It's funny, all the names that have been thrown around, right? You've got Jameis and Russell, two guys who at this point in their careers are best known for being walking memes. You got a guy in Drew Lock who's best known for rapping on the sideline, and you have a guy in Sam Howell who's best known for looking good. So at this point, I'll take a Super Bowl winning quarterback even at age 40 over those four guys at this point in their careers. And certainly the Cincinnati Bengals and Zac Taylor, I don't know that that's really what they're looking for this locker room. They're looking for someone to come in and command the locker room, gain some respect, and lead this team to a position where hopefully Joe Burrow can come back later in the season and lead them into the playoffs, right? And I have no idea what Jake Browning's leadership is like. I really don't. We haven't really seen that on display a whole lot. But already you're hearing stories about Joe Flacco's leadership and how respected he is in the locker room. And it's a difficult decision for Zac Taylor. It's a tough transition for this offense to go through. But at the end of the day, I talked about it when the trade went through, and that not only do I think Joe Flacco is a good fit physically in terms of what he can do with the football, but I just think his intelligence can elevate this offense to another level that we haven't been able to see with Jake Browning right now. And that's not a knock against Jake Browning per se. I just think that Joe Flacco brings something different to this offense, and the ability to read defenses pre-snap, set his offensive line up for success, and make sure that he's making the appropriate progressions as he's looking to throw the ball downfield. We saw at the end of the game on Sunday where Jake Browning completely missed a blitz. We saw, as has been mentioned already in this show, the scenarios where they had five guys blocking against a three-man rush and two men somehow found their way to be free for a sack. Those all, yes, absolutely have to do with the offensive line, and they have to be better. But the amount of communication that happens pre-snap between the quarterback and his offensive line to make sure that they are in the best position to succeed and seeing the same things that the quarterback is seeing ultimately leads to the offensive success that you're looking for. And for this team right now, they need someone who's able to do that and put them in a good position, because this offensive line hasn't been good and Jake Browning hasn't been able to make the throws that are necessary, and certainly hasn't shown an ability to go through his progressions. We saw it during the live stream on Sunday, which I had the joy of broadcasting as, half the time I could just sit there and say, all right, he's looking towards T, he throws towards T, incomplete to T. Like, it just was so many times over and over where he just went to his first read and he stayed on his first read, and that was it. And it allowed the defense to really key in on what Jake Browning was trying to do. And I expect that Joe Flacco won't necessarily be that. The other thing that's interesting, Stone, that I don't yet know what to expect, obviously, but we saw during the open portion of practice yesterday, Joe Flacco working under center, working on play action pass drills. I don't know necessarily if that's just how Joe Flacco goes through his warm-ups and his progression to get ready for a practice, but I also don't know that Zac Taylor is not trying to do what Joe Flacco wants to do. We heard him talk about Jake Browning and how Jake Browning wants to do similar things to what Joe Burrow wants to do, and how Zac is trying to put together a game plan that fits what the quarterback's room wants to do. Well, Joe Flacco doesn't want to sit back in shotgun. He wants to be under center. He wants to run play action. He wants to set up the run. He wants to have other things on this offense that allow him to keep the defense off key, right? So now we're looking at an offensive structure that has historically not been under center, has historically not run a whole lot of play action pass. Hell, Chase Brown had 8 carries in Sunday's loss to the Lions. So it'll be interesting to see how Zac Taylor adjusts to Joe Flacco just as much as how Joe Flacco adjusts to this new offense.
Trace made a really good point yesterday kind of about that, because I think it's pretty obvious that Joe Flacco, he'll be here the rest of this year, but probably not going to be here next year, right? And Trace was saying that it'd be really interesting to know what Joe Flacco is going to say about this team, and specifically Zac Taylor when he's done playing here, because he's going to give you a completely honest, transparent response as to what it's like playing for Zac Taylor, and how good of a play caller / head coach that he really is. And there's been lots of question marks, rightfully so, around Zac Taylor. What's your confidence that he can put Joe Flacco in a position to succeed, and as you mentioned, maybe cater to some of the strengths of Flacco that could ultimately help this offense?
Yeah, I certainly think that that's going to be an interesting storyline throughout the year. I also think one of the interesting storylines is, what is Joe Flacco going to teach Zac Taylor about what this offense can be, right? So if Joe Flacco comes in here and wants to implement a little bit more of his style of offense in terms of being under center and running the ball and play action pass, does that then affect the way Zac Taylor calls a game moving forward, right? Zac Taylor is seemingly a very player-favored coach. He wants to do what the players want to do. Can Joe Flacco come in here and almost serve as a mentor to Joe Burrow a little bit and to Zac Taylor in terms of how do we take this next step in this offense? And maybe it is a case of needing to diversify your looks. We heard for years about how the Bengals want to be multiple, quote unquote, multiple. And then you hear this week from Ja'Marr Chase, and maybe the quote is taken out of context a little bit, but you hear him say how the defenses know what's coming. And the comment was mainly geared towards the fact that the ball is either going to T. Higgins or Ja'Marr Chase more than anything else. But Joe Flacco loves his tight ends, right? So this should very heavily benefit Noah Fant and Mike Gesicki. He likes being under center. He likes this play action pass, and he likes to spread the ball out. And so Jake Browning, who heavily relied on his top 2 guys, and the defenses were able to key on that, that may not be the case with Joe Flacco. He'll be a little bit more efficient with the ball, better reads, and be able to dump it off. And so that learning from Joe Flacco is also going to be beneficial for Zac Taylor. What are we going to hear from Zac Taylor at the end of the year about what he learned from Joe Flacco? And if and when Joe Burrow comes back in 2025, how is the offensive play calling different, if at all, compared to when Joe Burrow started weeks 1 and 2?
And Craig, real quickly before we let you go, do want to kind of talk specifically here about this matchup with Green Bay. Obviously, this is a really, really good football team. I picked this to be the Super Bowl matchup. Actually, the Bengals and the Packers. One team definitely probably not getting there here at this point, but it's a Packers team that's coming off a bye. LaFleur off a bye, has the extra time to prepare, obviously, and it's kind of been a disappointing stretch here over the course of the past couple of weeks for Green Bay as they dropped the game to Joe Flacco, obviously, low-scoring game in Cleveland, and then you pride yourself on having a really good defense, but then you give up 40 points to the Dallas Cowboys and tie Dak Prescott. This is a team that's scoring 26 points per game, which is 9th in the NFL, and they also have the best third down offense in the NFL. So the Bengals certainly have their hands full in this matchup. I think a guy to really key in on is Tucker Kraft at that tight end spot. The Bengals historically have really struggled guarding tight ends, and he's kind of been their one, right? I mean, they've kind of have a multitude of different receivers that they go to and have the ability to be explosive, but they don't really have that wide receiver one. It seems like their best pass catcher right now is Tucker Kraft. What are some of the keys to victory and, guys, I guess the blueprint for you if Cincinnati is able to pull off this upset? What are some of the things that need to go their way against a really good Green Bay team?
Well, I love your call on Tucker Kraft. We just saw the Bengals give up 5 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown to Sam Laporta. I mean, this defense has continually struggled to guard tight ends in pass protection, right? So certainly going to have to key in on that. But I'm looking on the offensive side of the ball here, and I'm looking at how do you stop Rashawn Gary and how do you stop Micah Parsons? Because if you can't stop those two, then Joe Flacco doesn't have a chance to begin with, right? So how is Joe Flacco, how's this offensive line, and how is Zac Taylor going to set up this offense for success when you have guys like Quay Walker on the other side, Xavier McKinney on the other side, just waiting to either sack Joe Flacco or pick him off in the secondary. I think more so than anything else, the offense is going to be the real question, and can they score points? I understand what Reed's saying and how people watched the Cincinnati Bengals against the Lions and acted like they were, the 2002 Ravens, I think is the team that he ultimately selected. But the truth of the matter is that defense is much better and has been much better this year, despite the points that they've allowed. You look at this Detroit game and they gave up 14 plus points on short fields. And so this is a game that the Bengals should have been much closer in, right? They lose by 13, 37-24. You take away those touchdowns and all of a sudden you're winning this game 24-23. And so, yeah, are they some world-beating defense? No. But I do believe that if the offense takes care of the ball and they work on the field position game, that they have an opportunity to keep this as a low-scoring contest and give Joe Flacco and the offense an opportunity to win this game late in the game and maybe make a late touchdown or field goal drive in order to really seal the win in Lambeau Field. And maybe that's my rose-colored glasses or my orange-colored glasses, I guess, if you want to say that. But the truth of the matter is that I have a lot of faith in Joe Flacco, despite what we've seen out of him. And I think that he is a good fit. And so for me personally, that it starts on the offense. And I understand that Jordan Love came into this season as a trendy MVP pick. And I understand that Josh Jacobs is certainly in the upper echelon of running backs in this league, but maybe I'm mistaken here, but I think that they have a good opportunity to make some noise on defense and maybe finally show that, hey, if the offense takes care of the ball and we're not giving the opposing offense the ball at the 20-yard line every game, maybe we can stay in the ball game for once, right? I mean, that they brought up the Denver game. Jake Browning did in his post-game press conference, but again, the offense did nothing in that game, right? So the defense did their job. They held the Broncos to, I think, 28 points in that one. I think that realistically, you could be looking at a similar story here against Green Bay, where if you can hold Green Bay to 24 points and this offense can do literally anything, all of a sudden you're talking at 7 o'clock Eastern that, hey, the Bengals have the ball and they're driving for a chance to take a win. And that would be a heck of a story for Joe Flacco to come in here and beat the Packers for the second time on the season and send the Bengals home with a dub going into another pivotal stretch here with a couple winnable games for sure.
That certainly would be very exciting. I can tell you one thing, I'm more excited to flip on the TV today than I was a couple of days ago before making this move for Joe Flacco. He is Craig Sandlin, at Craig_Sandlin on Twitter. He's got you covered with a bunch of Chatterbox Bengals content, Chatterbox Reds content there as well. Actually, a podcast went out, premiered on the channel this morning. Him and Nick Kirby, they broke down Kyle Schwarber, among other things, Cincinnati Reds, as we kind of turn the page to 2026 for the Redlegs. Don't want to miss that. That's available wherever you get your podcast there as well. Craig, appreciate your time as always, and we'll talk to you soon, man.
You got it. Kyle Schwarber is not coming to the Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah,
so
I saw your
in
tweet,
the chat that's trying to get that. That's not happening.
Yeah,
a guy who since 2017 hasn't had a full season under 26 home runs is not coming to the Cincinnati Reds as much as we'd all love it. It's not happening. Philadelphia's making everything they can do to keep him there on the Phillies.
Unfortunately, I believe you are correct. But, hey, it's fun to dream a little bit here over the
Is
course of these next couple weeks.
Bring the Hamilton boy home.
Yeah,
Reunite
exactly.
him with Reed.
Right, exactly. 100%. All right, Craig, appreciate you. All right, Case. Wow. When you get guests on the show, the hour flies by pretty quickly, huh?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
But look, as the executive producer on the show that follows this, I don't mind if we tap into that show for a couple of minutes. I know you got to go, but we did organize a buy or sell segment. Give me your favorite buy or sell that you came up with this morning, and we'll go back and forth on that.
Okay. Let's take a look here. I've got 5 different ones.
Yeah.
I think we already covered this one. Did the Bengals fail to explore all their options when finding a quarterback? Well, we know that they didn't explore all their options. So I would say that that's a fail, but maybe you would disagree with that.
I mean, they did fail to do it, but I don't have an issue with it, right? I mean, just in the context of the question, like, yeah, I mean, they didn't call New York about Wilson and Winston, so I guess they didn't explore other options, but they felt confident in their guy. I know Reed brought up the point. Reed's always got the out-of-the-box thinking, right, trying to say that, the Bengals didn't even reach out to the Browns. They reached out to the Bengals and tried to ship Joe Flacco for a fifth-round pick. I don't think that is true, but I think the Bengals were had their eyes set on one guy, and they got him in Joe Flacco. But I don't know. Are you a little bit bent out of shape that they didn't go through the total list and contact New York?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think that it really mattered at the end of the day. I don't think it matters that whoever they got was just not going to be able to get this team where it needs to be. That's how I feel. If I can be a little more calm and not vent, I just don't think this team is there. Yeah. And I think we knew that. Like, we saw what this team was last year, and it's the exact same team, minus Joe Burrow, and that was a 9-8 team. Yeah. I think as simple as that. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't really bother me that they failed. I just think it's a reflection of their process.
Yeah.
And I think that's disappointing. Let's quickly I'm going to fly through the next one real quick. Mm-hmm. Will the MLB playoffs just be chalk? Because it certainly looks like, as it stands right now, that the 1 and 2 seeds are going to end up getting in. I think that's a little surprising, too, that some of these low market teams or smaller market teams, not low market, smaller market teams are doing so well. There's a real chance that, at least on one side, that it is just completely small market, right? Blue Jays, and then we got Mariners, and I can't remember who they're playing against.
The Tigers, yeah.
The Tigers. I mean, that is small market.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little surprising, a little interesting.
Yeah. I think at this point, as someone that doesn't have a dog in the fight, I think I'm kind of pulling for this, right? I did predict that the Cubs would beat the Brewers, but can the, Cubs give the Dodgers as much of a fight? And obviously the Phillies still have a chance. Don't want to completely write them off yet. But for me, it feels like it's going to be the Dodgers. And then, Reed, who obviously is a Cubs fan, he didn't seem very confident that the Cubs could win 2 more games against Milwaukee. And then that obviously would be 1 and 2. And then on the American League side of things, Blue Jays obviously already clinched. And then you got the game tomorrow with the Mariners. And, of course, the Detroit Tigers. And as a baseball fan, I'm just rooting for Seattle in that because the Blue Jays are really, really good. And we'll talk about them a little bit more in depth on my show, but I just don't know if Detroit has the firepower to keep up with them. I think you got some really good timely hitting there in Seattle, and that rotation is the real deal. So I'm certainly pulling for that, and I would say it's definitely trending in that direction here at this point.
I got one more, and then I'll give out my closing thoughts. Bearcats are actual contenders in the Big 12 race. Before you answer, I think that this team is surprisingly, from what we've seen the first couple of years of Satterfield, it just seemed like they were not there. Like they were just like one piece away. Turns out that wasn't necessarily the case. I mean, they are just like super explosive on offense this year and getting timely turnovers and sacks on defense that really help elevate their play so far this season. I've watched basically 2 whole games so far this year. I've watched the Kansas game and I've watched the Iowa State game, and I know Iowa State wasn't at full capacity, full strength, but man, they just tore them apart. I mean, it was not even a contest, and I know Iowa State ended up coming back, but if they're able to find that, I really like their chances at least to be a top dog in the Big 12, which we haven't been able to say in a while.
Yeah. I think, I'll hand up accountability. I was wrong on the Cats. Clearly, they're a lot better than I thought coming in. I think there are some people around the program that are sitting there like, yeah, we knew we were going to be pretty decent this year, and that's totally fine. I think they got a couple things going their way. They got some guys on the outside that can win on one-on-one situations. Don't know if they necessarily had that in years past. They got Sorsby playing at a really high level, and that combination in the backfield with Walker and Pryor is really, really good. And also, the schedule is very favorable as you kind of take a look at what they've got coming. coming at them. Texas Tech, who clearly, in my opinion, is the best team in the Big 12. They don't have to deal with them in the regular season. They're not on the schedule. And Arizona State, who obviously made it to the college football playoff last year, also not on the schedule. There are some difficult games. Baylor can score a lot of points. Sawyer Robertson at that quarterback position, one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the country, on the road to Utah, who maybe Utah isn't as good as maybe we thought, but that's a difficult environment. And BYU obviously ranked, and they're still probably going to be ranked when they face off at the end of November against Cincinnati. So still some difficult games on the schedule for Cincinnati, but it could be a lot worse. And it's just kind of, they got to continue to gain our trust, because would anybody be surprised if UCF came into Nippert Stadium at noon on Saturday and beat them? I know I wouldn't be. So I think they just got to continue to prove it here, especially the next 2 weeks against two teams that they should beat, and then we can begin to have that conversation. But the fact they're in this position now, coming off the biggest win in the Satterfield era against Iowa State, I think that's got to be really promising if you're a Cincinnati Bearcat fan.
Yeah, I know if you remember earlier this morning, I was pointing out their average rush per attempt. It's the second highest in all of college football.
Yeah.
It just is a testament to how explosive the offense has been as of late for that team. And I think that's been just the biggest improvement for the team, is just their offense has been kind of middle of the road for the last couple of years with Satterfield. Now it's just play after play after play after play. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are just wide open, and I don't know if that's a testament to the scheme or if they're just getting lucky, but I really like their chances if they can continue to do some of those things. Right now, average rush per attempt is 6.58 per attempt. I mean, everyone on that team is just eating right now. They got three backs in that backfield, and they're just having a good time. So love to see that. That will do it for the buy or sell. Let me just say a few things,
Absolutely.
Get out of your hair. We'll get you to your normal scheduled program here. I appreciate everyone for tuning in today and watching the show. I know this morning was probably a bit of a downer and a bit of a silliness, a bit of a rant. I needed to get that off my chest. It just not been what I was hoping for. And I know a lot of you feel the same way. This is not what we were hoping for. Feels like another wasted year. And we don't have a lot of those years left, at least contractually speaking. Joe Burrow probably has plenty of time left in his career to make something happen. But I really do appreciate you guys tuning in every day, watching our shows, watching our clips. It's been awesome to come back, and I've really enjoyed it. Despite me being so negative, it's good to be back on camera and to see everyone in chat. And just to say a few things that I saw in the chat: no beard oil. This is all natural. My hair, I need a haircut. My daughter, Sawyer, doing great. She's a healthy little baby girl. She's 4.5 months old. Love that girl to death. And she will get the hammer to start working on the roof when she turns 2.5. So be looking forward to that. So I appreciate you guys again. Hopefully one day we'll see some winning franchises here in Cincinnati. I know FC is a winning franchise, and they're probably the best franchise so far in Cincinnati to start. But I actually know the Reds. What am I saying? But I mean, fun fact, my NHL team, the natural disasters, the Avalanche.
Nice.
They're a disappointment too. Yeah. They're pretty bad too. Yeah. So I've just not had any luck in terms of my sporting fandoms. But anyways, I'll catch you guys later. Hopefully I get to do this again some other time, and maybe we'll chop it up again.
Oh yeah. Let's not make that the last time that you're in that chair. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I appreciate your help stepping in, and thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to switch chairs here in a second. The Stone Shield Show is coming up right after this. Appreciate you all, and take care for the next 5 minutes. All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. I am your host, Stone Shields. A little double duty today. Just got done with Off the Bench. I filled in there and was the host of that. Trace Fowler, Reed Mouse, they will be back in the coming days. And big shout out to Casey McAllister for stepping in and helping me produce that show. And now here we are, hour number 2. Still plenty of things to discuss. Certainly appreciate Reed Mouse, Craig Sandlin, and of course Casey for stepping up for Off the Bench earlier this morning. And now we're going to get into my show here today. As always, appreciate everybody sticking around throughout the duration of Off the Bench and into my show as, I'm losing track of time here. We've been doing this for a couple of weeks now, and, we're going to continue to do it going forward. And here we are here on a Thursday morning, but plenty to discuss here on the show. There is a football game tonight, Thursday Night Football on Amazon Prime. Philadelphia Eagles, who there's been some turmoil with the Philadelphia Eagles, despite the fact they only have one loss. They are facing an NFC East foe in the New York Giants. Jackson Dart makes his third start, and I think this has an opportunity to be a sneaky good game perhaps here on Thursday night, so we'll spend some time discussing that. Obviously talked at length about the Cincinnati Bengals with Craig Sandlin and Reed Mouse. We'll preview that game a little bit. We'll also preview it on tomorrow's show there as well. We'll talk MLB playoffs coming up on the show. Additionally, what a great series for the Toronto Blue Jays. They're certainly taking a victory lap after beating the New York Yankees. They, of course, had the tiebreaker over the Yankees, which allowed them to get that bye, which obviously is huge. And, they haven't been shy about celebrating that victory last night. That clinched a berth in the ALCS. So we'll talk about that. A couple of games in the National League today. Phillies stay alive. How about that? And Cubbies stay alive. To be honest with you, I didn't expect Philadelphia to win that game against Yamamoto, but Kyle Schwarber, he was unbelievable. 2 nukes in that game. Certainly a guy that many people would love to see here in the city of Cincinnati play for the Cincinnati Reds. I'm certainly one of those people. Is it realistic? Probably not, but we can still talk about it a little bit. And also, Ohio State, clearly the best team in the country as it relates to college football. Can they repeat and win back-to-back national titles, something we haven't seen since Alabama did it several years ago? Do they have the ability to do it? They certainly have the roster to do it, so we will discuss that on today's show. But let's start with Thursday Night Football, Eagles and the Giants. And, the Eagles, they've been near the top of my power rankings, obviously, for several weeks. They've been certainly a team that I have at that number 1 position for several weeks there as well. But then they suffered the defeat against the Denver Broncos, and a game in which they had control of that football game, and they had a sizable lead in that football game there as well. And they let it slip away, and it kind of felt like, to a lot of people, that it was only a matter of time before they ran into some of those issues when you're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, because there's lots of statistics that they have not been very good at, near the bottom of the league as it relates to a lot of passing stats, and certainly not ideal for Philadelphia, and they kind of were just skating by, right? They had the, blocked field goals against, obviously, Los Angeles. That helped them win that game. And, forcing some turnovers, that certainly helped them as well. And after one loss, they kind of had a players-only meeting, right? And these players-only meetings, not much good ever comes out of these players-only meetings, to be completely honest with you. It wasn't the whole team, but apparently it was just Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, and A.J. Brown getting together and basically saying, we need to fix a lot of things, obviously, on our football team in order to be competitive. They probably wish that story was not public, because a lot of people are talking about it, and, it's kind of, there's been some concern kind of around the Philadelphia Eagles, especially in that city, right? I mean, you lose one football game, even after a Super Bowl championship, people are going to begin to press that panic button. So I think it's an interesting game. A short week. They're coming off a loss. I've always had questions with Nick Sirianni when they hired him. I didn't think he was the guy, but there's one thing that he does really, really well, and that is win. And at the end of the day, that is all that matters in the National Football League. But he's not really an X's and O's type of guy. He's more of a, team building, morale, rah-rah type of guy than an X's and O's football genius. And he's always been heavily reliant on his coordinators to do really good things for him. And now, obviously, he loses Kellen Moore, who's now the head coach of the New Orleans Saints, has a new play caller there in Philadelphia, and things have been a little bit rocky here to start for them. And also, the biggest reason why I think they've taken a step back and aren't as good, at least to this point, as they were last year, is because of Saquon Barkley. You could argue Saquon Barkley is the best running back in the National Football League, but I mean, the amount of touches that he got last year, it was like over 450, including the postseason. Just an absolute absurd number for Saquon Barkley. And, at that running back position, you're taking all those hits. People question, it was a long season, obviously all the playoff games and the Super Bowl. People question whether or not he would look the same this year. And candidly, he has not. I mean, this is a guy that was averaging over 100 yards on the ground per game, which is just absolutely ridiculous. What a year that he had last year. But this year it's in the 50s as far as his yards per game and, his average yards per game here in 2025. And, when you're not running the football as well as Saquon Barkley, and you've had some struggles in the passing game, with Jalen Hurts, the offensive line, it's still really effective with the tush-push, but is it as good as they were last year? No. There's been some concern, and that's why they find themselves at the bottom of the league in a lot of offensive stats, and has, a lot of people hitting the panic button for Philadelphia. For the record, I think they'll be just fine. I think they'll figure it out, right? Jalen Hurts, all he does is win. You can say that, he's not your prototypical NFL quarterback that can dice you up when he has to. Well, that second half against the Los Angeles Rams, that was pretty impressive through the air from Jalen Hurts. He can still make all the throws. He's a phenomenal leader. He's always going to say the right things at the podium. And I'm not hitting the panic button when it comes to Philadelphia, but if they go out there offensively and show they're a little bit inept again in this game, by the way, against a really good Giants defense, it's still the Giants, but that defense there with Dexter Lawrence and others is a really solid, Kayvon Thibodeau, of course, a really solid defense for them. So they're going to have their hands full a little bit in this matchup. As it relates to the Giants side of things, that certainly is very intriguing there as well. When the Giants selected Jackson Dart, it was my way of thinking that he was going to be the future in New York. I feel like the things he has and what he brings to the table make him kind of the perfect fit for New York. He's a guy that plays with a lot of confidence, a lot of swagger. He's going to say the right things. He's a good leader, and he's tough, right? And I think you need all of those things to have success in New York. Not everybody can have success in New York. This isn't a small market, right? He's totally different from Eli Manning, obviously, but Eli Manning and Derek Jeter, those kinds of guys had the traits that you need to be successful in New York and deal with the media. And as a young guy, through a couple of weeks, and obviously hasn't faced that much adversity yet to this point, I think he's handled it really, really well. He can make all the throws, and he's really tough, and he can really pick up yards on the ground there as well. And obviously it's going to be a bit of a challenge for him. Without Malik Neighbors, obviously, going forward, who suffered that serious knee injury for the New York Giants. He's a guy that really likes to go to his tight ends and his backs. Theo Johnson has really stepped up in a big way at that tight end position. We'll see if that continues tonight against the Philadelphia Eagles. But the spread is 7.5. I'm not going to, it's a stay away for me, but it kind of feels like it probably should be about a 6.5 to 7 point spread, in my opinion. And obviously, it's a little bit more than that there at 7.5. But is Dayball coaching for his job perhaps for the Giants? Maybe. I think there's been some back and forth on what exactly you should do. And when it comes to handling young quarterbacks, Tom Brady and others have said, you got to let him sit. You got to let him learn the offense, whatever, and just kind of get used to being a professional before you throw him into the fire. Well, you kind of were in an awkward spot there with Jackson Dart because you didn't start him at the beginning of the year, and then you didn't really let him sit. He sat a couple of games. Like, what benefit did he get from that? And I just think that wasn't handled the right way. If you were going to go to Jackson Dart, I think you probably should have gone with him on week 1. Now, I get it's difficult because you had Russell Wilson, and maybe you made some promises to him about him being the starter when you brought him in, but I just think that in-between stage where it's like, yeah, you got this rookie, you won't start him week 1, but you'll roll him out there on, week 4 or 5? Like, that to me is just kind of a head-scratching move. It's either you sit him or you don't, and they were kind of stuck in the middle there, was New York. And obviously, Dayball's coaching for his job, and he wants to prove that they selected the right guy, their GM. Of course, Joe Shane is kind of, fighting for his job there as well. But I thought the decision-making as it related to, when they put Dart in, Didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but I don't think the lights are going to be too bright for him. Obviously, it's an island game, and he wants to prove a lot, but I think you'll see him protect the football a little bit better than he did against New Orleans. A lot of people expected that he would, beat the Chargers, then he would go on and beat the Saints there as well and improve to 2-0. The Saints at the time kind of felt like the worst team in the National Football League, but he had the turnovers, inability to really have a lot of success on 3rd and 4th down. That cost him the fumble from Scattaboo, and it just kind of snowballed him. And obviously, at the end of the day, the Saints are still a professional football team, and they played better. They took care of the football better, and they were able to pick up that victory. But it's a very intriguing game here tonight with some of the storylines that kind of surround it, right? The Eagles are trying to, quiet some of that noise down, prove they're still a really good football team. And look, things get loud in Philadelphia quickly, which is hard for me a little bit to wrap my head around, considering that they just won a world championship and they just lost their first game since winning a Super Bowl last week. And people were already saying, oh, they've got some issues there on offense, which maybe they do. But at the end of the day, they find ways to win games. And they're obviously have proven that they're really good at that with Jalen Hurts at the helm. And even before that, with obviously Nick Foles going on that miraculous run, they won games with Carson Wentz. It's just a winning organization. But I think that'll be a good game tonight. I think the biggest thing for me is how Saquon Barkley plays in this game. This feels like a game where he could break out. We haven't seen it yet this year. He's going against his former team. Barkley's a guy that always plays his best in the biggest moments, primetime game. Everybody's watching on a Thursday night. I think you'll see Saquon Barkley have a big game. And, they also got to find a way to get the ball in the hands of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith at a higher level and a higher rate in which they're doing right now. And for the record, they tried to do that last week against Denver, but that's a really good defense, and they struggled to do it. But, there's been some trade speculation floated around about A.J. Brown. Could he perhaps be on the move? Howie Roseman, of course, their general manager, he is not shy to making moves. He will trade anybody at any time. He's shown that. He'll move off players quickly. And, that could be something certainly to monitor. As, A.J. Brown, I think last year he kind of kept quiet because he understood, that what their DNA was as a team. It was offensive line. It was running the football. It was Saquon Barkley. It was the tush push. It was all those things. And he kind of understood that, I got to take the back seat a little bit here and, understand what the DNA is of my team. And now I think you're starting to see him run out of patience a little bit and understand that, hey, I'm one of the best receivers in the game. Get me the football. And I truly believe that's the case. And people kind of forget about it a little bit because he plays for Philadelphia and he plays with kind of such a run-heavy football team. But, A.J. Brown, I'm not going to say he's Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, but he's right up there. This is an unbelievable receiver, and I think you could make the argument that Philadelphia hasn't been able to use him to the best of their ability here just based on, what the kind of dynamics that they have as a football team. So we'll see if that continues to get noisy. Things in Philadelphia get noisy very, very quickly, and that should be a good game here tonight on Thursday Night Football, Eagles and the Giants. I think Philadelphia wins the game. I'm not going to make a pick as it relates to the spread, but don't be surprised if the Giants and Jackson Dart play really well and keep this thing close late. All right, Bengals and Packers. Big game, obviously, this week for Cincinnati. We've talked about the move at length earlier in the week. They made the trade, 5th-round pick given up for Joe Flacco. He's 40 years of age. He comes in, and he gets the start here in Green Bay at Lambeau Field against the Packers. Good news for the Bengals. He already played the Packers. Wasn't at Lambeau Field. It was at home against Cleveland, but the Packers looked very similarly than obviously they did a couple of weeks ago. I think maybe a little bit too much is being made of that. It's not like Flacco had the game of his life, right? He scored 13 points, and Jordan Love turned it over deep in his own territory late in that football game, so they kind of were gifted that game a little bit, but he definitely made some throws there at the end and allowed them to go down the field there and kick that game-winning field goal that ultimately won them the football game. But, Reed was joking about it on off the bench about how, they basically taught him the offense on the phone. Obviously, that's not fully true, but they definitely went over some stuff on the drive from Cleveland to Cincinnati. And I think you can expect Joe Flacco to play solid in this game. Is he going to go out there and light it on fire, throw for 350-plus yards, score 30-plus points, and throw 4 touchdowns? No. But I think you can expect him to play solid in this game. And that's why I'm such a big fan of this trade. Again, there were some names that we threw around. The Jameis Winstons of the world, the Russell Wilsons. Shame on me for not bringing up Drew Lock. Obviously, the Bengals reportedly were a little bit interested in him. I think that could have made some sense. But considering the situation you were in, you couldn't afford to roll Jake Browning out there for another game. It was just simply that bad. And there was only a handful of guys in the league, and you could make the argument there was only one guy in the league that you could trade for that you would feel comfortable going in there and starting after only a couple of days with the football team. And that guy is Joe Flacco, right? I mean, he's played a ton of football, as we've talked about at length. He's bounced around. He's been a journeyman. He started on a short notice in the past. And he's probably, relatively comfortable in these situations. Is anybody really comfortable in these spots? No. But if somebody is more than others, that is definitely Joe Flacco. And as each day goes on here throughout the week, I like this move more and more and more. Again, you couldn't afford to punt on the season. You came in here with Super Bowl aspirations, Super Bowl expectations. Week 2, it all crumbles before your eyes when number 9 goes down, and then you get blown out 3 consecutive weeks. You have to show a little bit of fight, especially considering the state of the AFC right now. Ravens stink. Lamar's going to be out again this week. They're 1-4. They're playing, I believe, the Rams. That's going to be another loss, right? The Steelers, they're 3-1. They'll find a way to be around 500, right? It just seemingly happens each and every year, right? There is a real possibility that 9-8 wins this division. And honestly, as it relates to the rest of the AFC, you don't see much, right? When you got firepower here in the AFC, you're talking about the Colts and the Jaguars. Like, who would have thought those teams would have even been discussed at all? I think most of us viewed the AFC South as the worst division in football, and here it's looking like one of the strongest. Don't look now, but here come the Houston Texans there as well. Looks like the AFC North, who, by the way, I predicted 3 teams in that division would make the postseason. They'll only probably get 1 here at this point as it relates to the AFC North. But the playoff picture in the AFC as a whole is weak. And with a 2-3 record, even though it feels like 0-5, they couldn't afford to not do something. And you got to give a lot of credit to the organization for doing their due diligence, making the move, bringing in Joe Flacco. Now, obviously, this thing could completely blow up in their faces. They're playing Green Bay, which isn't an ideal team to be playing, right, in this spot. It might be the least likely team you would want to play here in this spot, considering the state of their organization here at this point. They started out as world beaters, right? They beat the Detroit Lions. I just had the Lions at number 1 in my power rankings, obviously, after beating the Cincinnati Bengals. That certainly was a big win for them early in the season. Then they win week 2 as well. Look really good against Washington. And then I'm sitting here going, oh, they're the best team in the league. I did predict them to go to the Super Bowl. I predicted this would be the Super Bowl matchup, the Bengals and the Packers. Clearly that's not going to happen, or probably not going to happen here at this point. But then, they got some turmoil, right? They lose to Joe Flacco, in which their offense only scores 10 points. And you're like, what the heck happened there? They lose that game 13-10. It's like, oh, they'll surely get things right heading to Dallas against, a horrible Dallas defense. And, yeah, they scored a bunch of points against them, but they allowed a bunch of points to be scored against them. And Jeff Hafley, we were raving about his defense. The linebackers, they can cover in the secondary. The pass rush, obviously, second to none, you could argue there, especially with the addition of Micah Parsons. They give up 40 points, and then they tie that football game, and then they have the bye. So you're sitting there going, well, they just lost, then they tied, then they had a bye. They're going to be really hungry to get out there and get after the Cincinnati Bengals. So it is obviously not a very good matchup for Cincinnati. Lots of things that they need to be aware of. I think the biggest thing to me, and this is obviously me being Captain Obvious here, is how is the offensive line going to hold up? Is Joe Flacco going to have a chance in this football game? It's not just Micah Parsons that you got to worry about for Green Bay. Rashawn Gary, he's having an unbelievable year. And has he been unlocked a little bit more because of Micah Parsons and the threat of Micah Parsons? Yes, maybe he has, but at the end of the day, he's still playing really well. Devontae Wyatt on the interior, he's able to get to the quarterback and provide some pressure from the interior. Oh, it'd be nice to be able to do that, right? Cincinnati Bengals haven't been able to apply interior pressure since they lost DJ Reader. And then Lucas Van Ness, who's a former first-round pick who lost his job when they traded for Micah Parsons, he comes in from a rotational standpoint, and he's really good at rushing the passer. Those linebackers are insane. Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker. I could sit here and make the argument that they're the best linebacker tandem in the National Football League. And Xavier McKinney out of Alabama there on the back end, he's unbelievable. He'll pick you off. Joe Flacco's got to be careful with him roaming in the secondary. And that nickel, Javon Bullard, he's an absolute dog there as well. So they've got pieces all over their defense, and they're going to be a tremendous challenge for Cincinnati. Now, you have some borderline good news, maybe, right? Lucas Patrick, who is the guy that you brought in this offseason. Everybody was saying, hey, sign an offensive lineman, go get somebody big in free agency. Now, you also have to understand that really good offensive linemen aren't available in free agency, right? If you draft and develop an offensive lineman and he's good, you pay him. That's what successful teams do. But unfortunately for Cincinnati, they don't know how to do that, right? When's the last time that they gave an offensive lineman a second contract? It's been a very, very long time. So they're horrible at drafting the offensive lineman. Anytime you're a team that has to rely on free agency in your offensive line, you're probably not in a good spot. But there were still some guys out there that they could have went out and gotten. They did not. They waited till kind of the tail end of free agency. Then they bring in Lucas Patrick, who's never been looked at as a bona fide starter in this league. He's always been looked at as kind of a journeyman backup type of guy. And then you hear Zac Taylor and Scott Peters say, oh, we really like what we have, here in Lucas Patrick, and we really believe in him to, at the time, protect Joe Burrow, and you kind of were left scratching your head. There was reports about him struggling immensely in training camp. He obviously struggled in the preseason, and then he hurts his calf basically immediately. I think it was in the first half of the Week 1 game against Cleveland. And you haven't seen him since. Well, he was cleared to practice. He practiced yesterday. He was a limited participant with that calf injury. And based on the status currently of the offensive line, you have to be a little bit optimistic that, he's at least going to be able to help you out a little bit. Now, that's some positive news. Some negative news, Dylan Fairchild, I get he hasn't been that good. He made some, critical mistakes against Detroit. I mean, the safety at the end of the game, I get it was the end of the game. It didn't really matter, but what are you doing there in that spot? Maybe it's because he was hurt, but, I mean, he wasn't even looking at the guy running at him, and the guy didn't even run at him. He ran right around him, and Dylan Fairchild didn't do anything about it. Absolutely a horrible rep for Fairchild in that situation, but he didn't practice yesterday. He's got a knee injury, so maybe get Patrick back, but then Fairchild can't go, and then you're still starting Jalen Rivers, and by the way, you're asking him to play a different position again. So, it's been kind of unfair what's been asked of Jalen Rivers, but it's just life in the NFL. You're a draft pick. You could be called upon at any point. The expectation when you're in the game is that you go in there and produce. He hasn't been awful, right? It's clearly a team effort as it relates to the offensive line. It's not one guy's fault. It's all of their faults. But, a guy that came in and he was getting his reps at tackle and he was supposed to be that kind of next guy for you, right? That kind of Cody Ford type of player in years past that could go in and play different positions, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, we're actually going to need you to start, and it's not even going to be at a position that you're comfortable with at tackle. We're going to move you inside and play guard. That's obviously a lot to ask for a guy that was drafted in the 5th round. So looks like they'll get Fairchild, or looks like they'll get Patrick back. Fairchild might not be able to play, hopefully. I don't have an update at this time about what his status is, but that unit against Green Bay is the biggest matchup, right? I mean, Micah Parsons, right? That guy's the real deal. And you've got who on him, right? Trey, he's going to line up everywhere. He'll sometimes line up over center. They'll put him everywhere. But him against Orlando Brown Jr., that's a serious problem because Orlando Brown Jr. flat out stinks, as we said several times on this show. And then it becomes stopping the run. How are you going to stop the run? The Bengals gave up over 100 yards on the ground against Detroit, but it felt like a massive win against that tandem, Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery. I believe it was less than 4 yards a carry, 3.6. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it was, which you can live with that, right? Again, this isn't a defense that coming into the season we said, oh, they need to be elite. No, it was a defense that said, oh, they can just be average, and that should be enough to help this team get to where they want to get to. Now, obviously, you lose Joe Burrow, and you want to ask a little bit more of the defense, but stopping the run last week, I'll take that, honestly. I'll take it every single day of the week with how they performed against Detroit, and it's going to be a very difficult running attack here against Green Bay with Josh Jacobs. Now, they haven't ran the ball great, but they obviously have a really good running back in Jacobs and have the ability to run the football. And then you look at their skill guys on offense, and you're just like, oh, my goodness, like you don't feel good about anybody on your defense covering somebody apart from Dax Hill. And you sit there and go, oh, Matthew Golden, first-round pick, rookie, guy's an absolute burner. Is there anybody on this Bengals defense that can even run with him? I don't know, right? Geno Stone's going to be asked to do a lot at that safety position. Well, Geno Stone might be your worst player on your team, not named Jake Browning, all right? Romeo Doubs, he's just a really solid player. Right, he finds ways to get in the end zone and make big plays. Is he a world beater? No, but just a really solid football player. Dontavian Wicks, right? Same kind of situation. Christian Watson, by the way, might come back. There's lots of guys that are banged up for the Packers here in this game. Their injury report is long, a lot longer than the Bengals, even coming off the bye. But I think a lot of those guys are going to play, and they're probably not going to be without any significant guys in this game. And also Zach Tom, their starting right tackle that they've been without for a couple of weeks, looks like he's trending in the direction of playing. And for a Bengals pass rush that seemingly can't get home to the quarterback, that isn't a good situation either. But as I mentioned on Off the Bench, I think to me the key is Tucker Kraft. The Bengals have had serious trouble in the past guarding tight ends. You saw it last week against Laporta, but they were putting edge rushers out there against Laporta, so that was just you're not going to win that. That was just flat-out stupidity there from Cincinnati. I really hope they don't deploy that same tactic here in this game against Tucker Kraft, but Kraft has been unbelievable for this offense. He's kind of been that secret weapon for him. I believe he's their leading receiver here to this point, and that kind of gives you a cause for concern, because if you're in a spot where you've got, Logan Wilson or Demetrius Knight running around with Tucker Kraft, I don't know. You might get beat more times than not in that situation. So that certainly is going to be an issue. And also, you got to find a way to turn over Jordan Love, who in the past, that has been his knock. For what it's worth, I think the world of Jordan Love. I think he's an unbelievable NFL quarterback. He can make all the throws. He's athletic. He's tough. He's gotten banged up some. That's a knock you can make on him, and he's had issues in the past with turning the football over, but he only has the one pick on the year here to this point. Got to find ways to turn the football over if you want to have a chance to win this game, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. And we'll see if they're able to do it. They were able to do it weeks 1 and 2. That helped them win those 2 games, and really since then have struggled in that department. Obviously they were able to get the strip sack there on Jared Goff, which certainly put them in a good spot at the time. But, they got to find ways to create more turnovers in this game. And you need to see more from the coaching staff. And we kind of say this each and every week, and we keep waiting for them to be in a spot where they show us something. But they're in a position here going against a really well-coached team. There was questions with Matt LaFleur when he was first hired. And it was, is it all Aaron Rodgers, or can LaFleur really coach? I got news for you. Matt LaFleur can really coach. He's an incredible coach, and he's better than Zac Taylor. As much as I sit here and defend Zac Taylor when I can, he's better than Zac Taylor. And Hafley, he was at Ohio State for a little bit, and then he was the head coach at BC, left that job for the DC role here in Green Bay. He's done a tremendous job, and he's going to be fired up because the last time his unit took the field, they gave up 40 points. Jeff Hafley's incredible. I think it's only a matter of time before he's head coach in the NFL. So after all those things, that's where you get the 14-point spread, right? All the issues there that they're going to present defensively, offensively, from a coaching staff perspective, and they're at home, and they're coming off a bye. It looks like a significant uphill battle for the Cincinnati Bengals. So the question becomes, how do they win this game? I already mentioned the turnovers. All right, Joe Flacco obviously has to be competent. He has to significantly elevate the quarterback position, which I believe he will, even after only a couple of days being here in Cincinnati. Why do I believe that? He's played a lot of football in his career, and, I've watched football my whole life, and, maybe Nathan Peterman is worse than what Jake Browning has put on tape to this point this year, but I can't think of anybody else. And I respect Jake Browning for, being accountable and understanding that he had to play better and saying the right things for the most part, but it was bad. It was flat out bad. And I think that Joe Flacco is going to significantly upgrade that position, even if he doesn't play great. Like, all he has to do is play average. Right, and that would simply significantly upgrade that position. So they need that, and they need the threat to push the football down the football field. Right, the big play has to be a threat for this offense. You paid T. Higgins and Jamar Chase; they're two of the best at what they do. That has to be a threat. That has not been a threat this year for Cincinnati. Now the question is, can Joe Flacco, of course, have enough time in the pocket to hang in there and make those throws down the football field? We will see. Against this front from Green Bay, obviously we all have our questions on whether or not that can be done in this football game. But have to take shots down the field. All right, if it results in a situation where it's like, well, we didn't execute, now we got to punt the football, fine. Totally fine. They're in that situation. But they have to at least attempt to push it down the football field. You have those guys. That's what makes this team good. That's why going into the year, we thought there was a real chance that they can make some noise with Joe Burrow. Yeah, Joe Burrow was a massive part of that reason, but it was also the guys that can make plays down the football field, and they haven't even had an opportunity to do so at this point. Obviously, you would love for Flacco to have a bit of a run game. It's hard to run the football against Green Bay. You ran the football a little bit better against Detroit, but you were behind so quickly, so early that you didn't even really have an opportunity to do it. So we'll see how much of a factor the run game is. If you can't run the football in the NFL at all, you're not going to win. That's just the reality of the situation. I understand that, but past couple of weeks, they've just gotten ambushed so quickly, especially in the Minnesota game with the turnovers, and then last week with the turnovers as well. And you just found yourself where you were behind so much, where that allowed the defense to kind of pin their ears back and get after you because they knew you weren't going to run the football, and then you ran into some serious challenges there at that point, and obviously you were completely overmatched, and that resulted in 3 blowouts in that situation for Cincinnati. So got to get out to a fast start, right? Is this a situation where, if you win the toss, you take the ball? I don't know, right? They haven't had any success early in the game because the defense goes out there, and, the defense has been okay, but the defense gives up a touchdown on the first drive. Like, that's basically clockwork here at this point. So do you trust, take it with Flacco and try to go down and score right away? I don't know. That's for Zac Taylor to decide, but you have to find a way to be in a spot where that first quarter comes to an end and you're not down double digits. It's got to be a one-score game after the first 15 minutes of football. Ideally, you have the lead, but if you don't, it can't be worse than 7-0. And we'll see if they put themselves in that spot. We'll have a more detailed preview tomorrow with some keys to victory, but obviously Cincinnati has an uphill battle. They find themselves in a position with the new quarterback in Joe Flacco, and as I mentioned at the end off the bench, and I mentioned here on this show yesterday, it's more you're more excited about flipping the TV on Sunday than you were earlier in the week when you thought Jake Browning was going to be rolling out there as a starter. There's a level of curiosity and intrigue. Could it look just as bad? Maybe. My money's on it not looking as bad, but we'll see if this team can be competitive against what I still believe is one of the best teams in the National Football League. All right, Major League Baseball. Playoffs going on right now. Great time of year. Phenomenal time of year, right? NFL, college football in full swing. Baseball in October, it's unbelievable. Soak it in. Enjoy every second of it. Doesn't get much better than postseason baseball. The day yesterday was incredible. Baseball, started in the afternoon, went throughout the entirety of the night. It was phenomenal. And, obviously only one team has clinched their spot in the championship series, and that team is the Toronto Blue Jays. And this Toronto Blue Jays team is so fun. They are unbelievable, and you got to give them a lot of credit. They were having a lot of fun after the game. We were going to play the clip of what transpired on the Fox postgame show, but I wanted to hold back on that in case there was any copyright issues there. But basically, if you didn't see it, what a great postgame crew that they have at Fox with Jeter, A-Rod, and David Ortiz and Kevin Burkhardt. But they were interviewing Vladdy and of course, the John Sterling, their longtime radio guy for the Yankees. He always does the Yankees win, and they were mocking that and saying the Yankees lose, right? And with Vlad and David Ortiz, and they kept cutting to A-Rod and Jeter, and you knew Jeter just absolutely was not buying that at all because obviously those guys are Yankees, and Derek Jeter will always be a Yankee at his core. He always picks them right when they do the games, but that was a good moment, and the Blue Jays have absolutely owned the Yankees this year, and you got to give them credit for that. This is a team that was the worst team in the division last year, and what a rebound they made in one off season. Things got borderline a little bit hairy there with Vlad. What are they going to do? They're going to pay him? They're not. Borderline last minute, they paid him. They paid him well. $500 million actually is what they paid Vlad Guerrero Jr., and he absolutely lived up to it as he was unbelievable in this series as he batted .529. Right, and this was a guy before this postseason had been a part of some playoff baseball for the Jays, had not been a part of a single playoff win. Well, that has changed now as they obviously win that series after the bye in the wild card round. They beat the Yankees. And how about Ernie Clement there as well? Second baseman for them. Was drafted by the Guards. He's like 29 years old, veteran guy, plays second base for him, and just a dog. Just a complete dog. Batted .643 in the series, and they don't give out MVPs for the division series. They'll do that for the CS, obviously, but Ernie Clement, to me, clearly the MVP of that series for the Jays. And just, what Schneider was able to do from a managerial perspective, I think they threw 8 guys last night, full bullpen game. I think nobody really went more than 5 outs, and they just did a tremendous job pushing the right buttons in the pen, and those guys can hit. Those guys can absolutely hit for the Toronto Blue Jays. And, this is a day and age where it's like, oh, you got to put the ball over the fence and it's slugging and OPS. And maybe there's some truth to that in the regular season. Maybe there is. But this whole idea and notion that, batting average, it doesn't mean anything. Batting average is ridiculous anymore. You can't use that to quantify how good a player really is. To me, that's garbage, right? When you get to the postseason, batting average matters. And what do the Toronto Blue Jays do? They hit the baseball. They get on base. They led the league in the regular season in hits, and they were absolutely smoking the ball off the Blue Jays or off the Yankees the entire series there as well. So this notion that we're getting away from batting average, maybe that's true. You want to do that in the offseason when you're trying to construct your roster. Is there more to a player than what his batting average is? Fine. But at the end of the day, in the postseason, you want to win the postseason, you need to get hits, right? Does it help to put the ball over the fence? Absolutely. But this Blue Jays team rakes the baseball. They get hits top to bottom. And it really is incredible to watch. Obviously I am, I picked them to win the World Series, so maybe I am cheering for them a little bit too much here in this spot. But, this is all without Bo Bichette, too. Now, there's an opportunity that they could get him back for the championship series. What he did down the stretch in the regular season before he got hurt was unbelievable. I mean, him and George Springer were just a two-headed monster at the top of that order for the Toronto Blue Jays, and really were spearheading what they were doing offensively and carrying them. But, I mean, you look at their lineup, and Lucas, right? I mean, they're in the outfield, what he's able to do. Obviously, Vlad is tremendous and was tremendous in the series. Addison Barger there at third base. Alejandro Kirk, a guy that catches really well, but you can put him right there in the middle of your order, and he'll deliver some really good swings. Dalton Varsho, solid center fielder. Santander, who had all the injuries and really hasn't done much. What a great acquisition that he was. And he hasn't even been able to do much to contribute to the team, but he's still obviously a threat. And then you throw Jimenez in there at that shortstop spot when Bichette goes down. He's more than capable of playing winning baseball. And then obviously I mentioned Ernie Clement there as well. Think the world of him. He is a tremendous player, and the Blue Jays deserve a lot of credit. They're taking their victory lap, right? And, I mean, how can you not, right? I mean, they ended with the same regular season record as the New York Yankees, but they were able to get the bye because they had the tiebreaker. Obviously, that is huge, right? The fact they didn't have to play in that 3-game series, right? If you can avoid, there's pros and cons, right? If you have to sit your offense, and the bats, don't get to play for several days, that could be a disadvantage, right? You're seeing more teams now this year had kind of the inter-squad scrimmages trying to simulate a real game, and I think that's been beneficial because you've seen some teams in years past, most notably Baltimore, right, who's like, wow, they're the best team in baseball in the regular season, then they get to the playoffs and just get absolutely smoked because the bats don't show up. But this year it appears to be kind of chalky, right? We'll see. Obviously, games still to be played, but I think you would bet on the fact that, hey, it's going to be all the 1s and 2 seeds at this point playing in the championship series. But, they did a tremendous job. The Toronto Blue Jays did. Schneider, the manager, pushing all the right buttons. What a bounce back from finishing in the basement in the East to getting a bye to knocking off the New York Yankees, getting a win on the road to win for them. That's going to be unbelievable. And as a baseball fan, I would like to see them play Seattle just because I think Seattle gives them more of a fight. If it's the Tigers, I don't see that series going more than 5 games, to be completely honest with you. But looking at the other side of things, and, I wish people would do this more, but it's seemingly, everyone's, the Yankees lost again. Let's talk about the Yankees. Let's give some credit to the Toronto Blue Jays because they were unbelievable in this spot. But then you're back to the drawing board again if you're Yankees. Right, it's the team that's supposed to be, the proudest organization in all of baseball, the 27 World Championships, but they haven't won one since, 13, right, with Jeter. It's been a really, really long time since they've been able to do it. Obviously, got a bit of a taste of it last year, getting to the World Series, but ultimately getting beaten by a better team. And, they're going to have to make some changes. Again, they're obviously going to spend money, as they always do, and they'll try to retool and regroup for next year. But this wasn't a bad team. It was a really solid team in the regular season. As I mentioned, they were almost able to chase down the Blue Jays and take the division and get that bye. If they do, maybe this is a different series, if they have some more rest. But Aaron Judge, I was happy that Aaron Judge was able to silence his critics because he was unbelievable this postseason. I think he batted like 500 and, had a couple of bombs, which was big, had his big moments, obviously in Game 3, which kind of gave them life and avoided a sweep when they were down 6-1 in that ball game. But Aaron Judge, you can say what you want about the Yankees. I'm certainly the furthest thing from a Yankee fan, but Aaron Judge is great for baseball. As far as in America, he's kind of the face of baseball, and rightfully so. And rightfully so. I think he says all the right things. He does all the right things. He's a great teammate. He's an exciting player. I mean, looking at his stats, man, baseball is the most team game as it gets, right? It's not like a quarterback. And obviously the NFL is the greatest team game. But a quarterback, you're touching the ball every play. You have a real opportunity to take a team that might not be a championship team and elevate them to a championship team. It doesn't really work like that in baseball, no matter how good you are as a player. Mike Trout, a perfect example. I think Mike Trout was heading in the direction of potentially being the greatest player of all time. I used to make that argument, actually, that he was the GOAT, but he obviously wasn't even in a spot where he was even in the postseason, really, apart from, I think, 1 year. So I don't think Judge should be getting banged on too much for the fact that he doesn't have a ring yet at this point. My money's on he'll get one at some point, but he was phenomenal in the postseason for Cincinnati, for New York, and what he was able to do with his bat. And just, you take a look at his numbers during the year, right? I think well over 100 RBIs, batted well over 300, I think 50-plus nukes. Just an incredible season, as always, for Aaron Judge. And he'll be right back to it, and he'll be, still be the best player in baseball, or the second best player in baseball, if you want to say it's Ohtani, going forward next year. But the Yankees got to retool. We'll see. Aaron Boone's still under contract. We'll see if they bring him back or not. Do I think they need to make a move? Do they need a new voice? Maybe. I think Boone, for the most part, he's a good manager in Major League Baseball, but when you're the Yankees and it's just held at such a high standard, maybe you move off him. I think he'd have a job the next day if he did get fired by New York. But they've got to make some changes. And, as somebody that I don't necessarily root against the Yankees, maybe I do a little bit. But it's kind of been interesting to see them win all these games, get to the postseason, and continue to collapse. And that's going to be a narrative that they continue to try to overcome here at this point. The Cubs and the Brewers. Cubs stayed alive. They scored 4 runs in the first inning last night and then were able to hold on for dear life. I picked them to beat the Brewers before the playoffs began. Are they going to be able to do it? I'm not going to say they got lucky. They did a good job. The bullpen held it down last night, and they were able to stay alive. They will be playing again tonight late. I believe it's after 9 o'clock Eastern time, first pitch, Cubs and Brewers. Are they going to be able to do it again and send the series back to Milwaukee? I don't know. We'll see. But again, as a baseball fan, even if the Phillies come back and somehow beat the Dodgers, you feel like the Brewers are going to give you the best series there in that spot. And the Brewers continue to play good baseball. Jackson Chourio, getting him back. He's a dynamic player. They were winning all those games there without Jackson Chourio, which was unbelievable that they were able to do that. And, Kyle Schwarber, if we have some time here, we'll talk about at the end of today's show, but 2 bombs in the game last night. That one off Yamamoto, that thing was gone. I haven't seen a ball be hit that hard in a very long time. I don't know if I've ever seen a ball be hit that hard as far as what Kyle Schwarber did in that game, but the Phillies showed a little bit of life there in that series, getting up off the mat on the road, facing elimination. Offense showed up in a big way off of Yamamoto, who Reds fans obviously understand is a very good pitcher. Reds certainly had issues with him, but the Phillies stay alive, and we'll get those games in the National League tonight, and then we'll see if either one of those go to a Game 5. And then tomorrow, going to be incredible. Mariners and the Tigers. That staff for Seattle, nobody really talks about the Mariners because they haven't really had much postseason success, and they were kind of quiet, but a great move to get Suarez back on the team. He went deep the other night there as well for the Mariners. And, that staff with, Castillo and Gilbert and those guys, that is a real staff that can go out there and win a world championship. They're good enough to do that. I'm pulling for them because I think they'll give Toronto the better series than Detroit, but credit to Detroit for bouncing back. I didn't think they were going to win that game the other day and stay alive in that series, but that goes back to Seattle for a Game 5, and that should be a really good ball game tomorrow. All right, let's transition here to college football. We've spent a lot of time. Obviously, I do my top 10 each and every week. We're going to continue to do that. Really enjoy doing that here on the show. And, look, I'm not an Ohio State fan. I'm not going to sit here and act like I am, but you also have to recognize when greatness is transpiring. And that's kind of what you have right now in Columbus. And you can begin to ask the question about whether or not this team can repeat. And it is becoming a likely possibility, I would say, that they can do it. Because you take a look at their schedule, and they're not really going to be challenged at all before Michigan, I don't think. Right? They got on the road in Champaign against Illinois this week. It's a ranked matchup on the road. I get it, right? But Illinois also lost by 50 to Indiana. I'm not exaggerating, by the way, that they actually did lose by 50 points. And, Ryan Day has tried to say, it's kind of an outlier game. Obviously, he has to say that as the head coach. I don't anticipate that game being very close. And their schedule's really weak, right? They play Wisconsin. They play Penn State, who, I made the joke on the show earlier in the week that Penn State solely exists to give Ohio State a top 10 win. Well, guess what? They're not going to give them a top 10 win this year after that loss to UCLA. Purdue completely rebuilding with a new coach. UCLA, who, they had the big win against Penn State. Penn State might just not be very good at all. But that game's in Columbus. They don't have to travel to L.A. for that. They should handle business no problem. Rutgers is Rutgers, right? That's not going to be an issue. And then Michigan, obviously, has been the boogeyman for Ohio State in recent years. And we'll find out a lot about this team on Thanksgiving weekend when they do play Michigan. But they're just a complete team from top to bottom. And I didn't think they were necessarily a complete team last year. I think it was one of those situations where it was like, well, if Ohio State gets in here, they can certainly make some noise. And obviously they were going to get in, despite the fact that they lost to Michigan, but only 2 losses. And if you're a Power 4 team and you have 2 losses and you have a couple of big wins, you're going to get in the 12-team playoff. And Ohio State and Ryan Day certainly reaped the benefits of that. Obviously, if it was your traditional 4-team playoff, their season ends against Michigan, and then they go play in some bowl game that nobody's going to watch. But 12-team playoff, they got a break there, and they were able to take advantage. And it was interesting to see, like, what kind of team will we see take the field in the college football playoff. And from that first couple of plays there against Tennessee at home, it was, okay, yep, this team is certainly a threat. And that Tennessee team wasn't very good. But it was still, a playoff game. It was still, an SEC opponent, and there was a lot of orange in the stands. But Ryan Day and those boys, they were locked in, and it became evident they were real threats last year. What they were able to do to Oregon, one of the most impressive performances I've ever seen in college football. They could have won that game 90-0. Like, they were just, that was an incredible game for Ohio State. They kind of, took their foot off the gas a little bit at the end as they kind of just tried to keep everybody healthy going into the following game. But one of the most impressive games I've ever seen from a college football team. And then at that point, it was like, well, they're probably gonna win it all, right? Because Texas, they had some guys, but, and Ohio State didn't even play well in the Texas game. They were able to win there, and they didn't even play that well against Notre Dame either, and they were able to win there. So, they had the best roster, but the knock on Ryan Day is, well, you have good rosters each and every year, but you're kind of a choke artist, right? You find ways to lose games that you shouldn't. You lose big-time games, and obviously you can't beat Michigan there as well. And, he was able to get over the hump, and that's been huge for them. And you can see it by the way Ryan Day walks around. You can see it by the way he talks. He is completely different. Right, and now you're in a spot where you have to put him at the top of the line. Whereas, who's the best coach in college football? Kirby Smart. But after him, who is it? Probably Ryan Day. You got to put him here in that situation because, yeah, he lost some big games. Yeah, he had some choking moments, but he's always won a lot of games at Ohio State. Now, maybe he gets a little bit too much credit for that because, the Big Ten, obviously it's not like playing in the SEC, right? It's relatively weak, and he's beat up on some lesser opponents, and he always has the better roster every single time he takes the football field. But he does deserve a lot of credit for what he's been able to do at Ohio State and how he's been able to kind of, get that program. They've always been, nationally relevant, right? But now they're like, oh, they're one of the big dogs, right? Because they have an ability to win a national title. And I look at the team this year and I go, it's better. It's a lot better than they were last year. Bill Howard, credit to him. He was able to, be a national championship winning quarterback and will always be a legend in Columbus for doing that. But I didn't think he was very good last year for them, to be completely honest with you. I think Julian Sayin is a significant upgrade at the quarterback position. I think you'll see as time goes on that more people nationally will begin to recognize what Julian Sayin has been able to do. And, I said I think the 2 best quarterbacks in college football right now are Ty Simpson and Julian Sayin. And I think more people nationally will open up to that idea as well. I get he's got really good talent around him. It's Ohio State. That's just what you have, right? He did take a couple of hits against Minnesota, which I think was good to see because, Julian Sayin really hadn't been touched. So I think that was, good. Julian Sayin's a tough kid, and he's going to be able to take it, but, you never know, right, until you get hit in a game. Ohio State quarterbacks typically don't get touched. They haven't for quite some time, but he took some hits in the Minnesota game and was able to be just fine with that. The receiving core, Jeremiah Smith will eventually be a top 5 pick when he is able to come out. He might even be a top 3 or top 1 pick, to be completely honest with you, when he does come out. But Carnell Tate, he's a first rounder. Right, it's it's a factory there with Brian Hartline there. Obviously now he's calling the plays, but the receivers that come through Ohio State, they're the real deal. You're seeing it with Ibuka as well, and JSN in Seattle as they're having incredible seasons and have for quite some time. And Marvin Harrison hasn't even really gotten going, and he's arguably the most talented of the group. Has had some drop issues obviously for Arizona, but he's a really, really good player, and I think he'll settle in and be just fine as time continues to go on. But you got the skill guys, right? Claire, the tight end, you got in the portal out of Purdue. Offensive line protects, elite quarterback, head coach with a lot of confidence, walking with a lot of confidence, talking with a lot of confidence. And the defense is even better than last year, and they were the best defense in the country last year. Had to replace a lot. Lots of guys went off to the NFL. They've completely retooled their, defensive line, and they've reloaded. That was always the thing at Alabama. Under Nick Saban, it was we don't rebuild, we reload. And that seems like what Ohio State is now doing, particularly there on the defensive side of the ball. After all the guys that they missed, they make plays on the back end. I think Caleb Downs is the best player in the country, point blank. Some people would say it's Jeremiah Smith. Well, congrats. You have the two best players in the country there at that point. The linebacker position, Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles, if they can stay healthy, unbelievable. Right, those are dudes that'll be playing in the NFL. I mean, Arvell Reese, nobody talked about him last year. He didn't play a ton last year. Arvell Reese is a dog, complete dog. And he looks like an NFL player, and he flies around. He hits you like an NFL player there as well. And they've, done some McLean there at that safety spot. How are you going to replace Lathan Ransom, who did so well playing alongside Caleb Downs? Well, McLean seems like he's playing well at that safety spot. And you've improved at corner. Davidson Igbenogson was a starter on the national title team last year, but he was downright bad. He seemingly has made some improvements. Good decision by him to come back to school, give it another year. He's playing, trending in the right direction. Jermaine Matthews on the other side has been good as well. And then Devin Sanchez, who's gotten a little bit of playing time, the freshman sensation, 5-star guy, he's gotten in and he's looked solid there as well. So I don't see teams on the schedule that can really test them. Honestly, I think the country should be hoping that they beat Michigan, right? Because if they win out and then get to Michigan and lose again, then they're going to be all ticked off again, and then they might run through everybody again in the playoff. But I think that's kind of, as you're looking at the rest of the country, you kind of would lean on them. Okay, let's beat Michigan. Let's go into this thing undefeated in a spot where you haven't really faced much adversity, and then you can knock them off. I think that's what the rest of the country should be hoping for at this point. I'm not going to sit here and say they're unbeatable. I'm not going to say that. All right, Oregon can definitely beat them. Miami can definitely beat them. Alabama can definitely beat them. Georgia can definitely beat them. All right, there's still teams in the country that can beat them, but when they're firing on all cylinders and they're playing their best, and I'm sure Ryan Day would tell you they haven't even come close to their best right now, it's going to be a serious, serious issue. So I think the idea of them perhaps being that next team to repeat, we saw it with Georgia, saw it with Alabama, and could Ohio State be the next team to do that? Obviously, only time will tell, but things are trending in the right direction for Ohio State. We'll have a close eye on the game this week against Illinois. We'll preview it tomorrow on the show, but my gut just tells me that's not going to be a close game. Who knows? Maybe it's a close game, and we come here next week and say, all right, maybe they're not as good as we thought, but I think Ohio State cruises to a victory in that game, and as I mentioned, we will preview it tomorrow on the show. Lastly, before we get out of here, Kyle Schwarber, our Chatterbox Reds team, Nick Kirby, Craig Sandlin, they had a podcast that premiered this morning on the channel. Is on the channel. You can find it on the channel. It's also out wherever you get your podcast. They were kind of talking about the idea of bringing Kyle Schwarber in. They had that idea of doing that, by the way, before the playoff game last night. And Schwarber obviously hit 2 bombs in the game. Trace Fowler talked about this at length earlier in the week about bringing in Kyle Schwarber. Craig mentioned it at the end of Off the Bench, basically saying, don't get your hopes up. There's absolutely no way that Schwarber comes back or comes home and plays for Cincinnati. I tend to agree with him, right? I mean, when has this team ever made a signing like that? I mean, they couldn't even keep Nick Castellanos, who wanted to stay here and kind of continue to build, and he didn't even sign that big of a deal with Philly, and ultimately he leaves. So signing somebody like that in free agency, when have they done that? Right? I mean, they signed, obviously, Candelario, but the contract that he got, it was a lot, and it was way too much, but it wasn't close to what, Schwarber, the amount that he's going to get. Nick Kirby mentioned that he thinks it might just be around the $100 million range. He knows way more about this than I do. That kind of surprised me. I get he's not in his 20s. He's an older player, but he's also hit, 55-plus nukes this year, which not many people in baseball are doing that, and certainly would significantly elevate this Reds team. It's fun to sit here and talk about and speculate. There's been rumors that, he wants to come here. He played at Middletown High School. I went to Lakota East. And I remember our coach, I played baseball at Lakota East, and our coach would talk about, playing against Kyle Schwarber, right, or coaching against him when he was at Middletown. He was kind of a borderline prodigy, right, and then he was with the Cubs early in his career in 2016 when they won the World Series, and I believe he was like a catcher there, but then they threw him out in the outfield, and he was a DH. He was doing different things, and that was certainly fun to see. I remember that series. He played on the Cincinnati Flames, who people that are familiar in this area, that's obviously a prominent travel baseball team around this area. He played for the Midland Sluggers too, I believe, which is kind of same type of situation. So it would be awesome. Apparently, Trace said he's building a house here in Middletown. He wants to spend his offseason here. And if he's doing that, if he's still connected closely to Cincinnati, I would think he would want to come home. Now, people have thrown out the idea of, will he take a hometown discount? After you hit 55-plus nukes, I don't know if now's the time to do that, right? Maybe you get one more contract, a couple of years elsewhere, and you spend your high 30s, low 40s here in Cincinnati. That feels a little bit more realistic to me. But he has an opportunity for a big-time payday, and unfortunately Cincinnati is not going to be able to give it to him or isn't going to try to give it to him, right? I mean, this is the team where we're all sitting here counting down how many years of Ellie we have left before he leaves and signs some big deal. So, I mean, it would be completely out of the ordinary for Cincinnati to do it. I don't think, even if he really wants to come here, how much of a discount is he going to take? It would just be flat out foolish to do it, considering how many home runs he hit and how much money he's going to be able to make. Again, Nick Kirby said it might just be around $100 million. That seems low to me, but I'd certainly push that off to Nick, as he knows way more when it comes to that than I do. But I'd made the comment to Trace off the air the other day. We talk about, Cincinnati, just you can't run it back with the same exact group, right? You got to put some, new pieces in here, add and adjust and adapt and try to get better. And on top of that, hopefully the guys that you have improve there as well. I would be fine to say that if you had Kyle Schwarber, good enough for me. Roll it back with the same group that you have and add Kyle Schwarber. I think that could help get you over the top. Now, there's other people around the team that know a lot more than I do that would say, you're crazy. They still need some more things. But I wouldn't complain. If they didn't make a single move apart from signing Kyle Schwarber, I'm good. Good enough for me. I'll take my chances with that, because you haven't had a guy that can put the ball over the fence like that. Even Joey Votto, as great as he was towards the end of his career, he wasn't really doing that at a high level. He got back to it, right, and he went on that run a couple of years ago. I remember I was at 2 of the games at Wrigley where he was putting the ball over the fence. It was awesome. But when's the last time you had a guy that's like, they're going to hit a bunch of bombs? They're going to hit a lot. Obviously, Castellanos there for a little bit was able to get you some. But, Schwarber, when it comes to hitting home runs, there's really, Judge, Ohtani, who else are you going to throw in there? Cal Raleigh this year, but, nobody can put the ball really over the fence like Kyle Schwarber, and I think that would obviously be really, really exciting. It would put a lot of butts in seats at GABP. It would be a great homecoming story, and I think it could completely change the trajectory of this franchise. It's fun to speculate and talk about here at this point, but as he continues to hit bombs, shoot if he hits more tonight, the price tag is just going to continue to go up and up and up when you're talking about Kyle Schwarber and what he's going to garner here this offseason. But Reds obviously need to make some changes, need to add some bats. It's fun to talk about Schwarber. We can fantasize over it a little bit. Probably not going to happen, but certainly would put this team in a really, really good spot. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Stone Shield Show. 2 hours on the air here today. Filled in, was called in off the bullpen or off the producer chair, I guess, to host off the bench. Had a great time doing that. Big shout out and thank you to Reed Mouse and Craig Sandlin and Casey McAllister for joining us on the show, and appreciate everyone that stuck around for my show as well. Really love the Friday show here at my show. Got plenty on tap. We'll have our college football weekend preview, bets of the weekend. We need a good week. I'm not shying away from that. I understand that. Hopefully we can get one. And, we'll talk some more Cincinnati Bengals tomorrow. Obviously, we'll have some more injury updates and perhaps do some keys to victory on that as well. Appreciate everyone, as always, for tuning in. If you missed any part of our show, that's totally fine. The podcast will go up later this afternoon, and also some more clips on YouTube that you can check on. That will go on throughout the remainder of today and into the evening there as well. But until tomorrow, take care, everybody.